Welcome to Control. So this is the first game in quite a long video, but I'm going to go through 4 games. I've got on my list here. I've got Control, Scorn, D2 and Fable. What we're going to be looking at is modular modelling in 4 different games. 3, you could call them first person games, and then one third person game. But all of them have very different styles. One very, very different, one very kind of stylized, but all have got modular modelling everywhere. 2 games which are fairly modern, very modern you might say, using really nice rendering, really nice techniques. One which is online, it's been going for a few years, obviously that's D2, we've used that a few times, and then Fable, this is the original Fable, so that's going back a ways, that's going back to Xbox the Xbox, like the first Xbox generation. So, different techniques and different kind of ways of dealing with stuff. So, but first of all, we're starting off with Control. Now, if you've not played Control, it's a fantastic game. It's very spooky. It's very weird. If you have played Control, you'll know how cool this game can be. But it's got a very, very cool, unique style visually that not a lot of games use these days, or have really used that much. The first 2, in fact, Control and Scorn, have both got incredibly cool styles. But this one is very simple for the most part. There's not a lot of very weird things happening, but it's a great example of what you can do with very minimalist geometry, very simple design, but with very good use of materials, very good use of flow, good use of just general style, to really make some cool environments. So, as we flip into the game now to introduce ourselves to Jesse, coming through the door, we will start our time with Control. Okay, so we are in Control right in the very, very beginning of the game. So what we've got here is a really cool 1940s, 1950s to 1960s brutalist, a little bit Soviet kind of design, lots of concrete, lots of straight right angles, very minimalist as you can see, but still very, very cool. It doesn't feel particularly empty, it doesn't feel barren, it just feels very kind of official. Obviously we're taking a kind of a CIA, FBI kind of feel on things. And just inside this one area, you've got some lovely examples of some plants right away. Dead simple when you look at them. We've got some seating. So as you can see right away, it's very simple. There's not a lot of right angles. The complexity and kind of coolness comes from what's happening with those right angles. Cool little concrete elements here. There's lots of examples of where you could do some kind of modular modeling, or some modular elements. So let's get somewhere that's a little bit more interesting. Okay, so if we go up these stairs, again, really beautiful with the lighting. You know, it's very dark, and then we've got this just, I don't think it's sunlight, but it's just like big, soft box lighting up that area. So here we are, first little bit here. This little area here is a great example of some modular modelling kind of areas. So we've got big walls, obviously, but then we've got these wooden veneer walls. But if you look at them, each one is pretty much a modular piece. You can see on the left hand side you've got this gold strip, or this brass strip running down. On the right hand side you've got what we think is the beginning of, you've got the little brass square at the bottom right there. But here is just a big old square with a big wooden veneer texture on it, which looks to be, if I kind of line myself up, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 5 Jessies across. I don't know what unit of measurement you could use for a Jessie, but we've got 5 of this character across like that, roughly. But that is some great examples of like 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 and a bit there. So this piece here looks like it just comes a little bit short. Same for this piece, just comes a little bit short. So here we've got that example of a full piece and a quarter piece, whatever this is here. But you can see that's just repeated down the wall, very, very simply. And then on the ground, we've got some simple concrete flooring. This kind of like waxed concrete here with this carpet on top. So you've probably got the floor as one surface, and then this carpet with the rubber little liner there as literally on top. It's not replacing the material. It's probably sit directly on top of the material, which is cool. But again, it's not going to be that detailed. It's going to be quite flat. And in fact, if you look at it, you can see there's a bit of a texture line. See if you can see it on the recording. Yes, you can. Because you've got that little black mark on this ground there, and you see that strip there that runs to there. And then I can see a little bit of a thing on the ground, which makes me think that that's also. And then, oh, there's another one. So yeah, I'm looking on the ground, and I'm kind of seeing those squares. You're not just going to make the carpet as one big straight thing. You're going to break it up into little chunks. The big thing is just making sure it looks repeatable. Now this has got some wear on it. It looks like it's not been cleaned so much. You know, you can see this dark line here, which is very reminiscent of someone kind of coming up, walking, turning, and then going down. This is probably a decal or something, or maybe if this is done in Unreal, which I think it is, they could have done something called vertex painting, where they literally paint on a different material on top of another material on like environmental pieces. It's quite cool. But that's just offsetting a little bit of that perfection. You know, if the carpet was too red and too perfect, it'd not look realistic. And we can do this kind of stuff inside Sketchfab very easily. So far, quite good. Nice big chunky wooden sections there. So you got this little section here as well for the little handrail section, and right away in the middle I'm seeing that little divider there, which lines up with the flooring there, which makes me think that is basically got a piece on the right hand side and a piece on the left hand side. And then there's also something something's happening here at the very end. You got this kind of like little small square piece with two dividers, so there's probably bits of geometry there. You can't really see too much. I think I can see like a diagonal just at the bottom and in the corner of that handrail. I think I can see like a little diagonal divider line in the concrete, which would make sense because actually, yes, now that I'm looking at this closer, okay, so yes, this wall comes up to here, but then instead of just continuing on to a right angle, they make a diagonal divide there, so that you can basically have a 45-degree angle change, sorry, a 90-degree angle. Yeah, from there, 90-degree angle change to there. Which would mean this divider would be the end of the length. But because it's the diagonal, it's cutting off. Okay, now I'm getting that. I'm understanding now. And same for this. So here we've got this big old concrete slab here, and I'm seeing that there's a divider line again there, which could either mean that this is all one big piece of geometry, or you've got the pillar, which is part of the bit that juts out back into the foyer here, and then you got another piece of geometry which is giving you this length, this little bit here coming out. Who knows? Who knows? But very, very simple stuff to do, but very, very classy and stylish. So let's have a look inside here. So the toilets are quite fun here because I think all the toilets are the same as well. It's all like 2 stalls and 3 basins. Again, the materials inside here are really easy. You've just got a concrete kind of like cinder block wall that looks like it's been painted in some sort of like emulsion gloss. Now, something I really like about this, and I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but just where the light hits that corner, the paint gets a little bit kind of rough and uneven, which is very reminiscent to when you're painting these kind of things. Sometimes the edge of walls can get a little bit rougher because you can't necessarily, if you're using like a roller, you can't necessarily, if you're rushing anyway, if you're not kind of being careful, you can kind of not do a neat job there. But I like that. That's cool. And then you got little bits just to break up the walls. So you've got these like little air vents. You've got obviously the medical kit. You've got an aircon piece, and they're just literally going to be stuck on the wall just to break stuff up. Same with these little hand towel dispensers and a nice bit of little ladder. And what's happening on the flooring? So the flooring is very unique. I'm looking to see if I can see any repeating patterns in this, but I can't necessarily see it. They might have done some cool little in-engine trickery, which you can do to make stuff look a little bit less even. with all these like random colours of all the different colours. Cool. So you can see there, just inside this area, some really, really nice examples of very basic modular modelling. Everything's like 90 degrees, nice and uniform distances between stuff. Because this is meant to be a big building, it's meant to be built, you know, it's not going to be organic or anything like that. It's going to be built quite stringently to a plan. Oh yeah, and then they've broken stuff up. So little fillers, so like a couch, which is really easy to make. Little very stylish tables. Some I just noticed that magazine there. Some very basic magazines, a bag, or not a bag, like a briefcase, ashtray cup. Stuff you can knock out really, really fast. Oh, look over there. Then you've got some of those air vents over there. It's very cool. Okay, so moving on. And now we're getting into a bit more of a windy environment, but we're still using the exact same kind of ideas, except it gets tighter, and some of the dimensions aren't quite as uniform. So if we're talking like a single unit wall is one of these geezers, so that's like your standard unit wall, and we base everything off of that. In here, that gets a little bit different. So some of these walls are too thinner or shorter. You know, we're getting these nice veneer wood dividers, which is probably the same wood as outside, just on a very, very smaller piece. Windows helping us see inside. Not quite though, because obviously we're getting the blinds blocking us. And then we get these dogleg. We get a lot of these dogleg kind of corridors. A lot of filler as well. A lot of the filler in these kind of environments are very simple, like these little wooden boxes for kind of documents, this big old-fashioned Xerox machine, the janitor's cart, bins. Like this bin is really easy to kind of like make, but it just fills up the environment a bit. Love a little vending machine. So I've maxed out the graphics on this, but this is still very basic when you look at it. Look at the graphics. Look at the textures on there. Very, very simple. When I was playing this as well, I noticed that if you angle the light right, you can see that the text on these snacks are actually like stickers. Essentially, they're all just like normal map, not normal maps, alpha maps and roughness maps and stuff. Which makes me think that you've got 1, 2, maybe 3 different geometry, maybe 4, because you got the little bars down there as well. You got 4 different geometry types there that they just replace the text on, so that you're not making loads of the same model but with different textures. You got the same texture, this white with black text. It's dead simple to make, but it's also kind of, it fits in the aesthetic of the environment. This kind of very standardized kind of environment. So you got pretzels, but your pretzels are like the generic brand, you know, pretzels. And then you've got places like this. So we've still got, in keeping with the very brutalist concrete architecture, but then we're getting a little bit more kind of I don't want to say humanity, but we're getting a little bit more kind of regularity in here with the, you know, these office tiles with like big old sprinkler systems, them really horrible fluorescent office lights. Things to break up the things, the kind of the rooms a bit. So this seek shelter kind of fire alarm thing. Tables, which one thing I really like about this environment is that you've got this like really classy right angle veneered environment. Oh yeah, I forgot. Is that? No, okay, never mind. That's not happened yet. Really classy environment, but then you've got like really cheap furniture, like this rough kind of wooden looking desk that is super 70s. You know, it's kind of a bit crap. With all like the little files that probably 1, 2 versions of the geometry, just slightly different textures, color changes, that kind of stuff. It just helps you fill the environment up. These little very simple, almost like lawyer books. You always see these in like lawyer offices on TV. Loads of cups, exact same cup, dotted around. Look at that, more files. Little stacks of paper, documents, cigarettes, TV, flag, pen, cup again. You know, filling up the environment with a load of different stuff. You can knock that kind of stuff out really, really quick, and then you can spend more time on stuff like this, like the little. See if I can go. Yeah, I can go to photo mode there. These little fun little typewriter here. So a big old chunky 70s typewriter. I can't get too close. Unfortunately, it's not letting me get too close, but really, really fun. Again, dead simple to make. Same for the phone here. There we go. Same for the phone. Dead simple to make. There's a little stamp where it says cancelled. I just noticed that there. That's really, really fun. What's over on this there? So the same thing, you know, typewriter, but this one's got a little document on top of it. Phone again. Little Filofax flippy thing. Not Filofax, it's called a Rolodex. The old-fashioned reel-to-reel recorders and players with reels of fans. So all these kind of things to fill up the environment, to help sell the environment. Very simple, classy 50s chairs. Again, mock-ups. Look at that foliage. Look at the plant pot. Super fun. So lots of really cool stuff. But very, very simple stuff. Again, if you wanted to do some sort of like environment like this, you could do some really nice stuff with it and make it really nice and busy. Because a lot of this stuff, inherent to this kind of era of design, is all very like industrialized, but not dirty. It's all very clean lines, clean materials like concrete and steel and leather. Now there is something to this game as well I want to show you, which is great to think about, and I think it's just happened. There's our janitor over there. And this is good to know about as a designer, as a modeler, just as a gamer, just to know about stuff in this world. One thing this game does is it messes with the player. So now I can't go back. The world has shifted. The map has shifted. It forces you forward. Because when we first walked past here, you could see into this. There's a big wall of windows there that you can see in, but now you can't because that concrete wall's there. So it's all very freaky. And we've changed the environment a little bit. So now, if I just skip past this bit, yep, Jada Ahi, thank you. Now we're back to the corridor at the beginning, but everything's changed because we went in this way before, but now we're coming out this way. Oh, but the toilets are still there. More importantly, the toilets are still there, and down here is still there. So yeah, these environments are super cool to kind of play in because they're very fun. Okay, what's going on in this room? Okay, so we've got a clock, we've got Rolodex again, we've got all this kind of stuff. Okay, so that's just the very beginning of the game. You know, we've only really got into 5 minutes of gameplay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. I'm going to bring you back in a second when stuff gets to get really cool. Okay, so we are back. Bit of a change in the environment now. We're still in this same kind of, you know, era of aesthetics, but now we've just kind of classed it up a little bit. Whereas we had those nice big square white lights in the last room, now we've got these circular lights. Again, very 60s. Lovely reflections on the wall. This black glossy wall both sides. It's like painted concrete. Again, we've got that shiny concrete waxed floor with the carpet leading us. This guides us. This leads us in a direction, or it's calling the player in a direction. And then you got these really awesome like concrete motify kind of things here, but when you look at them, really they're just so basic. I remember when the town that I grew up in has these on a library, and they're so ugly. Oops, sorry about that. So ugly. But then we break up the environment with just stuff. So where you could have left this as a big empty room, but now what we've got is plants, fire extinguisher, chairs. Again, the same stuff. The same vending machine. There we go. I got the name. Cups again. Cups. Something was sparking then. I made something spark. So yeah, really nice environment. Dead simple. Again, a lot of the same kind of stuff. There's an alarm going off in this room somewhere. Interesting organic kind of tree thing. So lots of fun stuff, but again, we're still dealing with this everything's at a right angle aesthetic, but stuff starts to get a little bit cooler as well from here, because now we've got like the pneumatic tubes, which are some really good visual kind of visual breaks. Again, everything's very right angles, and you got these tubes which are very long and curvy. I like this door frame here. This step down door. Again, it almost like draws you to go closer. But again, we've got a lot of the same. Them repeated wall tiles. You've got the vertical kind of concrete sections. Big old FBI style emblem. More foliage, more basic stuff. And then we're in here. So again, more really nice level design just in general. So again, we're dealing with what is essentially a big rectangle room, but we're breaking up the scene just by changing some of the materials. We've got this really beautiful light at the other side of the room, which is giving us this, I don't know, it gives us like a window kind of into the world, or it gives us like a light. It's really nice for the environment. This roof here isn't just a flat roof. Obviously at the sides here, it looks like you've got that pushed in, or we brought the roof down. That's the height of the roof up there. We brought the roof down, then we've also given these concrete supports either side. Really cool, like golden brassy motif and embossment on the wall. More files, and I bet there's some cups in this room. Again, just filling up the environment. Now we've got the carpet has got this like design on it, and in fact you can see right there in the middle of the screen, you can see where the texture seam is, which is very cool. Now here, I like that this is a light up there. If you can kind of angle the camera in the right direction, there's just like a big light up there, which is casting down a really powerful, strong light, which is bleeding into the room. Okay, so now we're back after that little bit. So, now that I'm armed, the game changes. Now I've got danger parts, danger zones. The game starts to tell me where danger lurks, so it gives me indications. So one, you're introduced to it straight away when you're back in after the little training thing. Boom. Danger, red means danger. So if I actually go forward, I want to just point out really nice little display of bottles here. Again, dead simple to make. We did these in like the first assignment. You can smash these out very fast and make some really nice environments very quickly. So again, really cool design in this environment. Great for the 2D people, obviously great for the 3D people, obviously. But look at the two tones that are happening. You got blue behind us, and you got red in front of us. You got the aesthetics of the hanging bodies, which is always, always very kind of off-putting. But it's very clear. There's nothing really happening that's going to draw the player's eyes away from what they're meant to be looking at, which is obviously right in front of us. And then spooky red light. And then we're back in. So if I just dispatch of these guys very first. There you go. There you go. There we go. So now the environment has changed once again. Same place where there was a elevator before, now there is no elevator, and we're re-guiding the player down the red carpet towards where we need to go. Again, some really cool aesthetics that you can, it's very clear in the projector there, in the recording. So if those who don't know, this is how you used to clock in and clock out or work. Now you got your clocking cards that you might swipe. Back in the day, you had these clocking cards, literally a card that you'd drop in, you go and you'd clock yourself in. So that's everyone clocking in there, which is nice. Again, a really simple to make, but if you're doing anything like this kind of aesthetic, that's like a worker's environment. Dead simple aesthetic, but it's iconic, and it's just a great little iconic shape. Okay, so now we're back again after another little bit of a gunfight. So I've got 2 or 3 more environments to kind of show you, but it's all riffs on the same thing essentially. We're in another little office environment, bigger, but again, instead it's having like the same height of the roof and being a big kind of rectangular environment. Now we're kind of messing with the shape a little bit. We're thinking about levolution, evolution, different shapes, pathing, which is something in games is important. This is very important for people who want to be environment artists, level designers. Pathing is how you guide the player around. Again, you've got that red carpet guiding you around. But here, like I said, we've got cool little recessed lights. I love these little lights here. Again, this light here, green for go, draws the player towards places, but again, we've just got another one of those toilets. Nothing too special. More office spaces that you could, again, once you've got a bunch of these assets made, you can basically make the same environment over and over again, just in bigger and different configurations. I mean, what is this but a big old box of handles on it, really? But the great thing about this room that I like is this room. Obviously, aesthetically, emotionally, you've got these hanging bodies in weird spaces just kind of floating there. That gives you this kind of spooky element. And then you got this big, like, godlike vibe around this obelisk of a thing. You know, really, really cool aesthetic. More of that office space, kind of broken up into these. You see this a lot in kind of films that are meant that have scenes that are meant to represent like dystopianism or kind of like begrudging workers. You have these like rows of desks. So here you've got that iconic kind of rows of desks. You know, the boring monotony of work kind of thing. And they're all pretty much the same. Yeah, these two are identical. Oh, I'll push it over. Oh, that's interesting. Actually, I never noticed that. The tabletop is a separate piece of geometry. Interesting. I wonder if I can shoot it off. Destruction. So yeah, very, very cool environment. There's not that much that's different here. Again, we've got the same repeating motifs of these concrete crossed lines. You've got that concrete kind of vertical aesthetic there for this little like hole. Concrete as per usual. You've got these nice little pneumatic tubes flying around here. This is like one of the machines. Where is it? Over there. You can see there's two of them. So you've got where you put all the pneumatic pods in there, and then the pneumatic pod. These are like carried by air. This is how you used to send messages around the company, and that's just giving you some cool design stuff. You know, it really. One of the scenes we're going to look at is where they really play with the pneumatic tubes to give like a really cool environment. Yeah, very, very cool environment. Still in the same aesthetic, like I said. Actually, while we're here, I'll show you this place. So this breaks up the scene a lot more. Obviously, in this nice, clean environment, you got this big old like shelter door. I'm gonna go in. Which inside here, we've got more like a bomb shelter cannery kind of thing. With these, I don't know why I'm picking this up, I'm not even going to use it. These sound buffer, whatever these are on the wall. It's probably got something to do with the game, the spookiness of this game. So, this is the next environment that I'm going to show you, and this is your main kind of hub of the game if you've never played it, but again, what's happening? We've got that red of the environment, it's spooky, it's intense, you know, bad things are happening. But one thing this game does in areas like this, where you need to quote-unquote cleanse, you have a lot of strange geometries just kind of jutting out of places. Again, these floating bodies. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with this area first, and then I'm going to come back to you. Actually, I can do it before they actually start kicking off. So you can see here in this pre-cleansed area, it's all blocky, it's all, you know, wrong and different, and you've got this wavy element going on. It's telling a story that something's not quite right with this. You know, what are all these concrete blocks jutting out of the walls and floors and stuff? Very, very cool. So here's you see the environment, right, structuring itself back in there. So you can see how all these like weird little squares now recede in. The proper pillars emerge. Fantastic design. Fantastic design. And now we're in the hub, essentially. It's quite a key area of the game, this, because then you got the ominous pyramid. Again, we're sticking with the same design aesthetics, but now we're a few others. We've got these like pillars, which are stepped, which are reminiscent of these steps. Which, if you look, they all line up. Like the steps here line up with these little steps of the thing. Someone's going to be whinging at me for a bit, and let me find these people, and then we can carry on without them. There we go. So if I just let these people out. Yeah. There we go. Thank you, Emily. I forgot it goes on. There we go. So, quite simple environment. It's pretty much a big old square, but with some walls, with some stairs. We've got this decreasing floor by 3 every time, with the pyramid in the middle. Again, these kind of little stepped columns that line up with the steps of the floor. You've got the boardroom. Again, the aesthetic is, the motif of the aesthetics throughout this is beautiful. This beautiful like light with these concrete recessed sections on the walls. Again, this wood paneling, but this time it feels a bit wider. You know, this feels like a little bit wider and darker. Simple little planters, again, just to break up the monotony a little bit. Very simple, the aesthetic of this. Like I said, it's all based off this kind of like 1950s to 60s brutalist kind of Soviet-esque kind of design, concrete efficiency, right angles. You know, it's not meant to be pretty and flowery. So the last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pause the video again, get to the last bit that I'm going to show you, and then we're going to move on to Scorn. Okay, so now we're in this place. I just have to go for a full thing to get here. But this is a really cool aesthetic. Again, this is really good for the concept art people, but obviously for the 3D people as well. Look at how cool that is. So you've got this spider web of pipes running into this kind of central hub. It kind of breaks up this this monotony and this like perfect right angles and everything's so clean, and all of a sudden you've got this nest of pipes running into this sorting machine kind of thing. I don't know, it makes it look really, really cool. I like that aesthetic. Now, one thing I've not talked about in the past couple of clips is the modular modelling side of things. That's because in an environment like this, all the main modular modelling things we've already looked at right at the beginning, it's just a riff on the same thing. You know, if you look at a floor like this, you can clearly see the tiles, because you can literally just use that. Where that floor tile is in place there around the floor, that's your floor tile. This is an X by X kind of flooring section. So you can say like, oh, this is going to be like 8 by 10 floor section. All you have to do is do 8 of these floor tiles and 10 of these floor tiles. You could also tile these if you know you're going to use the exact same texture with no variations, and you're going to do things like little decals on top to you know, where the floor's kind of smashed there. That's a decal, that's not actually part of the floor. Where you've got this little water section here. Again, that's part of a decal, not the actual floor itself. So you could put one big piece of single geometry there, and then just do the whole tiling texture trick, where you're thinking, okay, I'm going to scale this up so it looks like it's 8 by 8 or whatever, or 8 by 10. Things like the stairs, again, this would probably be... This may be 3 sections of floor. So from the ground, where you've got these little foot sections to hold it in place, you've got one section to here, and then you've got one section to here, then you've got one section to here. So this might be 3 sections long, but all you've got is like the top section, the middle section, the bottom section. And it looks like you got a couple of different widths there. So again, how are you going to deal with that? So you've got longer pieces there with kind of like a wheelchair access thing here, but then this one's thinner with no wheelchair access, which begs the question: how do you get wheelchair access here before you get over there? I don't know. But again, these wall sections, very, very easy. You've probably got a divide in the textures there, or a divide in geometry there, so you've got this painted lower section, but this uses the same normal map or something, so so it looks like it's the same painted material, possibly. Yeah, so they use the exact same normal map, but you've just got a green section then that goes into the wooden section there. Is it wood or is it concrete? I think it's wood. Yeah, so painted section then into wooden section there, but using the same normal map, so it looks like it carries on. But again, these will just be sections of wall. Another painted section there. So this is, let's see if I can see. I can kind of see there. Something is telling me that that's the end of a texture section, and something's telling me that possibly that's the end of a texture section there. Yeah, so from there to there, or maybe from this bit here, because if it's a repeating texture, then this would be the repeat. Oh, light's going weird. Again, more of these modular pieces just to break up the world a little bit. Big columns of pipes, just to break up the world a little bit. Things to break up the world. Okay, so yeah. Oh, this is a toilet flooring. This is the exact same floor as a toilet floor. So as you can see, in this kind of environment, because everything's very right angle, everything, at least right now, everything's very even. Your tiling and your modular modelling is very simple, because all you got to do is work to your standard wall divisions, and then do half, quarter, third versions, You know, if you're carrying on a texture from one painted wall to an unpainted wall, all you got to do is make sure that the normal map carries on so it looks like it's the same wall. Now, even these pipes as well will be built modular, possibly. Actually, looking at it, thinking, well, these pipes over here, these pneumatic pipes there, they'll be modular. So you'll have a bit down there just below the clock, which would be like it comes out at a right angle from the wall. That'll probably be one section, and then it goes up maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 sections there of pipe, and then it does another curved section, probably a straight section, then another curved section, straight section, curved section into a straight section, then curved section again, and that's a lot of straight sections going down to there. And then you got a twofer there, so this is probably, you probably got like a group of 5, group of 4, group of 2, group of 3, and a group of 1. Because obviously you've got 1 pipe here, you've got 5 pipes there, you've got 2 pipes very close to each other there. Oh, which they join. They come from 2 singulars and join and then twist into be flat, and then they go down the wall into there. So okay, but all these will be like modularized for the most part. This section here with the very, very curved ones, I believe this will probably be built for purpose just for this, because this is obviously a big set piece. But all the other pipes that are around the building, they're everywhere. Same for these dudes here, these like big inner air intake pipes. These will all be modular, and you've just got to think about all the different directions and intersections you'll need. So here you've got like a little T-junction section, you've got a right-hand section, that's a concave in right-hand section. Oh yeah, there'll be a right-hand section. It doesn't matter if it's concave or not really, because you can just, yeah, that don't really matter. So yeah, straight section, curved sections, bunch of straight sections into curved sections, into a T-junction, into straight sections, T-junction, straight section, T-junction, into the wall. And again, another thing on the wall there. You see on the wall you got clocks, you'll have security cameras, you'll have air intake vents. On these walkways here you've got these beautiful little wires that hang down to support it, that suspend it from the wall. Obviously all over the shop you've got bits that you can interact with that are all physics objects that you can blast around. Little bullhorn sections, another one of those little shelter things. So all this stuff goes into break up an environment, and the environment that we'll be doing is small enough where you don't have to worry about filling it up too much, but then it'll also be big enough where you can play with the space a bit. So that's Control. Very straightforward. It's really playing off, it's riffing off an environment which is very clean, very straight, lots of right angles. You can clearly see the divisions of different environment pieces, and you can really make out how that was built modularly. It does get a bit wacky later on, and there are some bits like our little pneumatic tube section here which are a little bit more complex, but generally quite an easy game. So that's us done for Control. Next we're going to go look at Scorn, which is polar opposite to this. And this is Scorn, so let this play out for a bit. So Scorn compared to Control is a very different aesthetical game, where obviously in Control we're dealing with a lot of like 1950s aesthetic, clean lines, man-made. This is heavily inspired by the works of H.R. Geiger. It's organic but not terrestrial organic. If anyone has played Scorn, you'll know what I mean, or if anyone is familiar with the work of Geiger, his work is organic but like biomechanical, you'd call it. The environments look like they're made of flesh, look like they're made of meat. There's not really any right angles. Everything's kind of got some kind of motif or design to it. Nothing is how we would know about it in the real world. So I'm wondering if I don't think I can skip this bit. While we're kind of going through, I'll talk to you about Scorn. So Scorn, fantastic game. You can kind of see the kind of games that I like playing. Scorn is a prime one. It's slow, it's moody, it's beautiful. It's by a studio called Ebb Studio and Kepler. I believe those teams are very small. They're not particularly like big, you know, not on the size of like EA or anything. Nowhere near that size. I first played this when it was on Game Pass on Xbox, and whenever you do console gaming, consoles were always throttled due to the fact that you can't change any of the hardware in a console. So this is the first time I this isn't the first time, but I've recently bought this on the PC and I've whacked up the graphics to make it as beautiful as possible. But the thing about this game is lighting is a major part of this game. Massive part of it, and it shows how important lighting is, even within 2D, 3D design. Lighting is incredibly important, because if this was lit wrong, the whole place would look like crap. The whole place would just look rubbish. So let's talk about Scorn as a game. So as you could probably see right from the beginning, it's very dark, so I don't know how much of this is actually going to be visible. And I'm wondering, do I bump up the gamma? And no, I'm going to leave this because I don't want you to miss out on the lighting of this game. Okay. So let's look in this little area here. So this is a prime example of the general aesthetic of Scorn. Just nothing which is terrestrial here. You've got a door, obviously, and you've got some kind of switch here, but that's it. You know, there's nothing else which we could look at and go, oh, okay, that's just that. Yeah, that's a door. I can see that in IKEA. There's no clear mechanism to anything. There's no man-made elements. These are all appear to be like organic and even reminiscent of real-world things. Like this thing right in the middle of the screen there kind of reminds me of ribs. And if I look down, I can see it myself, which is good. You know, you've got a lot of like bone and sinew. And like I said, lighting is an incredible part of this game. So I'm going to kind of defeat the game a little bit. This, right at the beginning of the game, is a prime example of how this game deals with its modular modelling. So right here, we've got this little walkway section, and we've got this bulkhead. And I'm going to call these things bulkheads, like in a sci-fi game. This is a bulkhead. This then separates us from this environment to this environment. So from here, you can see that you've got these, to the right-hand side, you've got these 7, 8 little rib things, but on the left-hand side, you've not. But you still kind of got this bone-like dry material for a wall texture here. Okay. So again, look at here, you've got these bone sections, and then you've got something that divides it. And then you got another 7 bones, then something that divides it, then another bit of, then something that divides it. So right here, what I've got is 8 little bone sections with this little thing above it, and then we've got the same thing here. But we've just shifted some of this to the side a little bit, and over 2 of the little bone sections, we've got this kind of pipe section here. It's not quite as cut and dry as what it's like in Control, but the same kind of reason is still happening. We've still got a length of geometry and then stuff to break it up. You've even got these little guys on the ground that help kind of like break up the monotony a little bit, or help us if we were modeling it, be like, okay, this is a floor section, break, this is a floor section, break, this is a floor section, break. So you can see there, even they're not monotonous, they're repeating. Now this isn't just unique to the game. Again, if you're familiar with Geiger's stuff, you will notice that within his biomechanical environments, there was still like a heavy man-made mechanical element to it. You still have repeating patterns that would show things are constructed. It's just constructed in a very alien way. So as we wind up, we can see that, again, we're getting the same repeating kind of element. The bulkhead every now and then. These little pipe sections every now and then. The bulkhead section. So this bulkhead section pretty much separates this whole curvy walk section from other sections. Now we're in a flat curve section, but then, ooh, look at this, we've still got these wall sections. We've still got these repeating sections. But now it's a little bit clearer to see that that modular section where we've got a bulkhead, then we've got a wall section, and then we've got the break in this kind of rib thing here. And then we've got another one, same length of wall section, rib thing, same length of wall section, rib thing. They're just putting in some little bits. Again, we've seen these all over the shop so far. These little 2 pieces. They're just breaking up that if stuff repeats too much. Now, one of my favourite parts of the game is actually right at the beginning. It's behind me. Oh, the lighting. Very reminiscent of the little thing we just looked at in Scorn. In Control. We've got these like pipe sections. Now actually, if we look at that pipe section, especially in the middle, you're going to see that this pattern runs down the length and it just repeats. So you got like a length of pipe, and then there's like a little pill-shaped window where you can see this cord on the inside, and that just repeats down and down and down and down and down, 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 down. So that will be one piece of either geometry or one piece of texture which is just repeated over and over again. And I can't zoom in, and there is no photo mode in this game, but there's some really nice draping stuff, which even from here I can see is such a basic low-res alpha map. But only because we're staring at it. You know, generally as a player, as a civilian walking through, you're not going to really care that that's a flat plane. You're just going to see pipes. You're going to see beautiful lighting, the atmospheric fog, these two little practical lights here, and then whatever light is coming in from the middle there. And you can see a lot of, again, repeated elements, a lot of modular modeling, but it's just done very differently because of the aesthetic and the organics of this game. You've got these little protrudences coming down, which are just repeated 4 times around this donut. But you can see there are loads of repeating textures, loads of repeating elements. So if I carry on, all this area is kind of like pretty much the same thing. Oh, these pillars as well. So we're always going to talk about pillars. And pillars generally in our world are big, long, straight things that support a roof. But here we've got pillars which are almost giving us like little windows to look through. You know, it shows support. It is showing that it's holding something structurally, but it's just breaking this whole section up. So we're not just like a big old open section. You know, it's helping us break up this element, fill in the space a bit more. Okay. Now back in, and again we're into some nice modular elements. We've got these little sections breaking it up with these kind of rib sections, and then we have a little section to break it up, rib sections, and then we've got this bit. So I think this bit is from this floor section here. Anything to the left of it is a corridor essentially. Anything to the right of it is this, and this is what I might call a prefabricated environment, because I think it also ends here, which is basically just a piece of environment which has been pre-made that you could put into any point. So these are all like sections of corridor. This is something that'd be like, right, we can open it up a little bit more just to kind of change the shape a little bit. So instead of having like just a continuous corridor, every now and then you might slap in one of these just to help it kind of expand a little bit, to tell a story. You know, if you're on like a ship, maybe this is where you might have like a hydraulic inspection port. If you're in a house, maybe this is where you might have, or like a mansion, this is where you might have a window, or you might have like a place where you've got like some credenza or something. And then we carry on, and then we got another little one which opens up a little bit, which possibly, maybe, the floor is also helping us divide this up. So we've got this thing running through the middle, this track, and on the right hand side we've got what is the wall of the building there, this wall of corridor, but on the left hand side here, this is where it opens up. Okay, so you see this prefab here might only be on the left hand side. I wish I could draw on the screen now, but I can't because I'm in game. I can't do my epic pen in this. But I'm sure I can go through in class and actually, you know, pause the video on the projector and stuff. But yeah, if you look at this grey track that runs down the middle, on the right hand side there, you've got the little nodey block thing on the wall. On the left hand side there, it kind of opens up a little bit. But if we carry on a little bit, follow that track down, we hit something where again it opens up. Then it opens up 2 sides. So now we've got the same kind of thing happening on the left hand side that's happening there, and then just this on the left hand side and the right hand side. So you can see cool stuff. Oh, and some nice little coils as well. So this, for us, just inside Maya, will be done the exact same way that we made it during the coil. We just make a piece of geometry, and then we can apply it to a wire deformer. Very, very cool. Another little break just to kind of give us some storytelling. So you can see, hopefully you'll be able to see where the modular modelling comes into this, you know, where we have these sections, and it's just about the stuff we put in these sections that break it up. The thing that makes it harder to see the modular elements in this is just the general aesthetic. It's everything's curving, there's no real right angles in anything. It's very easy to see in Control, because obviously everything's got that really beautiful 50s aesthetic, which I love. And this, which is another aesthetic that I love, is super organic. It's also the way it's painted, or the way it's textured. Whereas in Control, we're looking at a lot of like realistic PBR, concrete materials and wood materials. Here, we're dealing with things that were inherently brought from paintings and airbrush paintings. There's no PBR in this. Well, there is PBR, there is physical based rendering because we've got the materials there, but there's no concrete, there's no wood. But there are things that are reminiscent of wood. There are things that are reminiscent of bone. There are things that are reminiscent of flesh. So we're playing with organic materials as inorganic elements, inorganic components, I guess. And here we're into this section. This is where I'm going to leave. I'm going to do a little bit of exploring in this section, then we're going to move on to Destiny 2, and then we'll move on to Fable. So, as you can see, when you really pay attention to this game, there is a lot of modular elements, because there has to be. You know, you can't build a game this big, because it's a very big game, physically. You can't build a game this big, with this much cool design and aesthetics and all this beautiful lighting, without building modularly. Okay? The thing with this, though, is just each of these modular pieces are just beautifully crafted pieces. Very, very geometry heavy. They do a lot of reliance on repeating materials. You see the same material repeated a lot of places. So that bone material, which is on the walls inside here, for instance, this is everywhere. This is on the floor, it's on the walls. You can see it's right here on this kind of wall section. This bluey material, which is on this door frame here, it's everywhere. Again, it's on the ground over here. It's on some of the, like it's in this little recess triangle section here. So what they're doing here is they're doing some really cool stuff with materials. They're doing a lot of very big but simple tiling textures, and they're just applying them to different material. So remember, inside when we take stuff into Sketchfab and we take stuff into Substance Painter, we apply different materials to stuff, so they can we can separate off the UVs and stuff. We can separate off the UV sheets. Kind of the same kind of reasoning here. They'll just have different materials on different models, so that, and if people are familiar with Unreal, you'll know why this is and you'll know how this works. But if I've got a model, say I've got this door, for instance, let me go back to the door. There we go. So I've got this door, for instance. I might have all these little texture sections inside Maya. I might give them all different materials, so they can basically say, right, okay, what would be this bluey kind of material here and here? You can see it dotted around everywhere. In the geometry, I'll just apply the material to that. So all that has the same thing. So I can go in there and basically, when I'm in Unreal, I can just drag in a material and put it onto that thing, change the tiling a little bit, and I can basically develop the material in the engine. And then I might think, okay, then I might need that lighter, woodier colour, which is kind of like that there, you know. Then I'll apply that in that material slot. I'll apply that inside the Unreal Engine. So, you know, this might be a mixture of bright greens, reds, yellows, purples, blues, blacks, whites, fuchsia, all the different colours I need for all the different materials. I think that's how they're getting away with such the aesthetic, because they're repeating a lot of the same aesthetic. They're just doing it in very clever places. And in the game engine, there's also really cool stuff we can do. When people start looking into Substance Designer, or if people have already looked into Substance Designer, there's really cool things you can do by what we call instancing materials. And for instance, I'm just looking down at these like little ridges. Now what you can do is you could have this same material here could be the same material which is right here. Could be. I'm not saying it is, but it could be. And all you have to do is basically change some exposed parameters from design and basically say, right, whereas this one, I want to make it very woody and striated. Maybe that's a control that we have inside Designer. You know, if we increase and decrease that control, we can basically increase and decrease the fibrousness. See the little fibers on the wall there? The vertical fibrousness of this material that might show some like material underneath it. Whereas when we apply it to this, we might decrease it. So then we're looking at it, kind of makes it look a little bit more like sinew, like flesh being pulled over ribs kind of thing. Actually, here's a really great example if you look carefully. I can't crouch down, so we're just going to have to kind of look down. And my guy always wants to look up when I walk forward. But right there in front of us, if you look at that little piece right in front of us, especially ignore the two ribby sections left and right. Just look at like the blue and white section in the middle. It repeats. It's tiled. It's mirrored. So you can see there, you've got like at the very, very top of that little middle section, you've almost got like horns that come up and come to the middle. You know, a player's not going to notice that, or if a player does notice it, they're not necessarily going to notice that they've noticed it. They just kind of look at it and go, "Oh." But for us, we can look at this kind of stuff and see how they've made this object. You can see that they've made one half of that and then just mirrored it over on both the blue and the yellowy whitey section, because everything's just mirrored. You know, all the different cracks, all the different kind of like striations, all the different weird shapes that might appear in this like organic texture, they're just mirrored on the right hand side. Left and right are both mirrored, and you'll see this a lot. And I think this is again another reason why this game looks the way it does, is they've leaned into the organic element obviously, but they can't have everything be super asymmetrical and stuff. So there are places which become very asymmetrical, but then it's backed up by this symmetrical object here, which as a player walking in, let's face it, the player walks in, they just see this beautiful shiny line guiding them to look up to this bit here. They're not going to look like at this angle. You do not see that little rail in the section we've just looked at has that mirrored repeating texture. You don't notice it. You never notice it. You see here this nice asymmetrical environment. We've got some drooping, alpha maps to get this, like, I don't know what it might be, seaweed, let's just call it. Whatever it is. This is hanging down. You've got this broken thing on the left-hand side. You've got this asymmetrical claw-like thing in the distance. You've got this beautiful light coming in from somewhere in front of us. And as you walk forward, obviously you look over the edge. The closest you're going to see to get this repeating pattern is there. Really, if you're, as a player, but then it's kind of broken up by this pipe a little bit. Then you look down. And you're not going to notice. So before I go, there's one last thing I want to show you. It's just down where this little tower thing is, and then we can move to Destiny 2. Nice. This is the most normal organic environment you'll have in this first area, where it literally is like a cave. And this is just made up of rocks that have been smashed into each other. You go into any cave section in the game, and a lot of the time you'll be able to see where rocks are basically just placed in each other, like there, for instance. You can see where the two rocks are just basically placed in each other. And this is then backed up by just these weird organic supports. So maybe this is a mining environment. Ooh, I don't know. So let me just go through. Let me be strong man. Strong alien man. When he wants to get through. There we go. Ooh, clip through the door. There we go. British. Okay. Alright, where are we going? Okay, so I can't go through there. Is it here? Is it here? Oh, I have to do this first. So give me a sec. This game is not for the faint-hearted. If you're ever like squeamish about stuff, or if you're is it trichtophobia, where you don't like lots of little dots or something like that. There's lots of that kind of stuff in there. There's lots of I won't call it body horror stuff. It's just lots of like icky stuff. Again, if you're familiar with Geiger, you'll be very familiar with that kind of thing. Where am I going? Ah, that's where I'm going. But the last bit here is just a really cool example of where we're using the exact same material over and over again in kind of different ways. Alright, so I need to do you first. And then I need to do you. There we go. That's my first kind of puzzle done. And things drop on the ground. Give me some nice little environmental, and I gotta run. There we go. Right. So, in this room, there's some really nice little bits of reused textures, and it's this right on top of it. I'm stood on it. It's this little bony floor section here. This is everywhere, and it's all across these like curved surfaces. Now there are some pieces that are quite like this, for instance. Here, it's really nice. The bend is even, so it's a consistent kind of curve that goes round. You've got it broken up by this like mossy green stuff in the middle. right there. And I wish I could crouch down, because you've then got the edges of here, which you can kind of see that uneven surface. It's not a perfect round, and I'm ignoring this square repeating pattern up here. I'm talking just about this bone section below me. So you can see as you travel around, it does kind of change its shape and gets all bumpy and wobbly. Now, I think I know what they're doing geometrically to do this. I have a feeling they've got a basic disc shape. Let's call it maybe 30 edges round to keep it nice and like high res for them. They got like a 30 edge round piece of geometry. So let's call this piece 15 edges round. So 30 all the way around, but this section is 15. So they've done that. And I'm talking about the inner circle, so ignoring the very top here. So I'm going to hide that. So this section of the disc here is 15. But then when you go to the edges, you want to have this lumpiness, don't you? So what I think they do is they turn that 15 into 30 or something, and they start making like triangles and stuff to increase the amount of edges. So you go from one edge, turn it into a triangle, which turns it into two edges, and they might do that a few times. Now I'm talking about this being retopologized on a sculpt as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if this is all sculpted ahead of time and then converted into something later on. But I think, yeah, what they've done is gone from a low resolution area in the middle, because it's flat and you don't really see the silhouette at all, and then made it higher resolution just to kind of silhouette these nice little lumpy, almost like mushroomy elements on the outside. So you've got this kind of bony mushroomy material here, but then you've got it here as well with the same stuff. You can see how lumpy and bumpy it is on the edges to give that very cool organic bone kind of aesthetic. And then here you got the same material, and then here you got the same material. Now on these sections here where you have these little holes, if you look around the edges, you'll really see where the texture gets pulled, like right there. Oof. But of course you're not really going to see that as a standard player, and it's not actually that bad. It'd be really bad if it bent, if it were like the smear was going the opposite direction, basically perpendicular to this. But this, because you've got this striation, the grain of this texture is going up like this. This is basically following that grain, and any stretching, you can forgive it. But you can see there, this is going all over the place. And I think what they've done here is, again, some very cool in-engine stuff, which we can't replicate inside Sketchfab. But generally, I think what's happening here is you've got a flat tiling texture, which is this bone material. And then they've got some very elaborate geometry for this whole bottom of the tower section, because this is a focal piece. This isn't just everywhere. This is a piece you come to look at. And what they've done is just basically very cleverly built this environment, UV'd it, and then arranged the UVs so this tiling texture goes round in a circle. So this would be a standard tiling texture that would be unidirectional, because it's got a grain. But then they've just slightly distorted it so it gets tighter as it gets to the middle, or it gets wider as it goes out to the outside. Because obviously around a circle, the inside of the circle is going to be smaller than the outside of the circle. And there's only a few places where that's a little bit more noticeable, and it's in these kind of places here, where the circle's obviously a lot tighter. But generally, if I go up to the top of here, you're going to see that the circle which runs around the outside, it's big and it's quite shallow for such a big texture. But you can see how much that bone woody texture is being used to circle around. But that just would be a standard unidirectional tiling texture. But then they also do some engine cool stuff, like they do some vertex painting. There's some really cool stuff they've probably done with ZBrush. I have got the art book for this, but unfortunately it's not got any 3D stuff in it. It's just got like the illustration stuff in it and a bunch of like explanations. I would have loved to have seen how they did the materials to this in the book. There are some examples out there in the world. And then we're back to this little bony material, little ridgy bony material thing, like ribs. Which again, I want to talk about some future stuff that you could look at as if you want to be environment artist, prop artist, vehicle artist, that kind of stuff. You've got these two materials here. You've got this going down here, which is kind of rib-like, and you've got this here, which is definitely rib-like. Now, the cool thing about these materials that we can create these days is they can be the same actual material, but you can expose things in Designer to change parameters that can be updated inside Substance. So one parameter might be the regularity and the straightness of these lines. So in here we've got the regularity where there's, I could just notice a texture seam there as well, right there, texture seam. The regularity is even, so like every X units you're going to get a line, and all the lines are straight. And then if you can mess that parameter up a little bit, change some of the parameters, you can bring those edges closer together, but then maybe also make them a slightly more uneven, so slightly more wobblier. And then here it's a coverage, so maybe the coverage here is only on the highest part. It takes the height of the mesh or whatever as the highest part. Maybe this is using some kind of not alpha map, some kind of ambient occlusion map or some kind of height map to also help derive these materials. Again, these are things you can do in Unreal. And this one is using another one, but we can change the parameters where this one, in the high sections, you're using that white material, and the lower sections, you're exposing more of that fleshy material. Whereas this one, you're exposing the height a little bit more, but because you're not using as much of that height map, you don't see much of the underlying flesh, quote-unquote flesh. And it all looks very complex and very, very scary and all that kind of stuff, and you're thinking, oh, I'll never be able to do it, but really you can. These is really nice. This look like ribbed shell vertebrae kind of thing here. That's just a nice bit of repeating geometry. So very, very cool. So that's Scorn. We're going to leave it there with Scorn, because Scorn is a very slow game. It's a very big game. And to be honest, until you get to stuff like way, way further on in the game, it all just kind of looks like this for a bit. But a great example of another different way we can do modular modeling, whereas again, it's control, very, very clean. It's very obvious where things are being modular modeled. You can see consistent sizes, and it's very easy to say, like, okay, that's going to be like 13 units wide and then 32 units tall. Cool. This, not so much. Now you're thinking, right, here's a wall unit that's going to be roughly between this and this, and I'm going to I'm going to be more organic with how I build my modularity. That's going to be relying less on, so this environment relies less on things matching up perfectly so that you don't see a seam. It relies more on organic shapes being used to break those monotonies. So what you'll see is a lot of like things like this thing in the middle there. That'll be placed on to break the monotony. You know, you don't necessarily notice them everywhere, but you'll have pillars, or you'll have sections like this where you'll have a wall in the bony wall section. You might have this whole section here which you'll replace a texture, or maybe this is a prefabricated version which you can basically say, okay, here's my wall, it's all nice and consistent, but then I'm going to use this like messed up part of the wall just there in that one section just to kind of break that monotony. Or it could be a decal, something you put on top. Again, pillar. Yeah, so this game is really, really nice to see, like, for an example of like really taking modular modeling to a whole new level. And paying attention to your source material, because these guys have paid incredibly good attention, incredibly close attention to Geiger's work. And there's other different artists inside here, but it's mainly Geiger. Cool. So that's Scorn. Again, another game that I think everyone should play, especially if you want to be an environment artist. Even some characterized stuff, because there's some creatures in here which are really wicked and kind of icky. So what I'm going to do is pause, and then when I come back, we're going to look at Destiny 2. So here we are in Destiny 2. So let's talk about Destiny 2 as a game. So far we've looked at Control and we've looked at Scorn. Both of those are single-player games. They've both been produced in the past 5 years. They're both dedicated system games, so there's no online stuff. You know, you install it onto your computer and that's it. It's all about graphics. It's all about telling a visual story. One is a little bit faster than the other. Control is a little bit more faster paced, whereas Scorn is a slower walk simulator kind of game where it's puzzles, there's a little bit of combat, but it's not particularly like washy blashy. There's a little bit of time taken. Destiny is an online game, and it's a game where a lot of things can happen on screen at the same time. You can be in environments with a lot of other players, but it's also, unlike games like Apex, CSGO, Overwatch, it's a game where players can come in and out of the environment kind of readily. Whereas stuff like Apex, League of Legends, all that kind of jazz, you load in with a specific group of people and you stay there till the game ends, and then you load out, and the map itself is a self-contained map. This is a little bit different. It's a flowing game. It's a live game. Things come and happen. You know, the maps are always open. People can come in and out of them. Things are always happening in the maps. So it's all about optimization. It's all about getting the most out of the game for the least amount of stress. Because in games like this, you've got to play on your computer. Then all the stuff that happens on your computer has to go through the internet, through to maybe 2 or 3 servers, up to another person's computer, and then back down to servers, and then back to you. And you got to do that like thousands of times a second. You know, if you're in a place full of, if you're in a raid is generally very big, and you've got 6 people, and there's loads of grenades going off, and there's loads of like magic spells going off, and magic spells, it's not magic in Destiny, loads of like abilities going off and stuff. There's a lot of stuff happening. It can get it can be very, very difficult for a computer to run. So they've got to really be aware of what they're doing. So we're in the tower at the minute, and as you can see, there's a little bit of an event going on, which is cool because all this stuff will be kind of like built in, and then when they need to kind of like instantiate it, when they need to bring it into the environment, they'll basically bring the servers offline for a bit. They'll basically essentially turn on a button that says, you know, Season of Dawning, yes, and then it'll bring in all the Season of the Dawning stuff. I believe I could bet that's how it works. I don't work at Bungie yet, so I won't be able to tell you properly. But just inside this one area, we're going to visit like 2 or 3 places in Destiny to show you some cool stuff. But even in this area, there's some really cool examples of modular modelling. Now, one thing that Bungie do really well is their level design, and even inside of places like this, which is man-made, it's mechanical, it's structured, there's still some nice wobbliness. Nothing's completely like just a bunch of right angles and stuff. So what's actually happening in this environment? Well, where to start? Well, we can start off at that beginning. So you load into this area here. And I am just going to buff up my brightness a little bit if I can. Can I buff my light brightness up? Can I increase my brightness? Oh, the brightness, sorry, push right in front of me. Okay, so I'm at my brightness already, so if I come here, well, you should be able to see it over here. Okay, so you load into this area here, and this is like the landing platform, and right away we're on a very nice basic kind of bit of flooring, but there's some cool stuff happening. You've got the repeating texture of this concrete-y kind of stuff that we're stood on, but then you've got these little dudes on the floor here, these little ringlets, which are on flight carriers, basically there to hold stuff down. So if anything was to land here, you could tie it down. And that's what these little ringlets are. And in fact, on some of them, you can see that you've got a bit of 3D geometry sticking out of it. You can see one right at the bottom of the screen there. You've got some like 3D geometry with, in this case, you got like a little bit of a tether still connected. Gives you that impression that something's there. So that's this little ringlet as well is a 2D piece of geometry. It's not actually on the floor. It's a little plane that's had what we call an atlas applied to it, and an atlas is a piece of material that carries a lot of elements on it. So it could be around, and it's a combination of alpha maps, of materials, of normal maps. So on this alpha map, for this particular thing, you've got a little circle. That's all you'll see on the alpha map, because you're just controlling the circle. But then on the normal map for this, what you'll have is what looks to be like a little metallic plug thing, and that's it. And then you can apply like a metalness map to it, or something like that. And that just gives the impression of this little plug on the ground. You can see there at the bottom right hand side of the screen, there's one there. It's like a little plug. And that is literally, like I said, just a flat piece of geometry. It's not actually physically there. And that way you can have a big old flat piece of geometry with a tiling texture and then break it up with these floating meshes. And the same thing's going to be happening with these little corner pieces. I'm making assumptions here because I'm thinking this is going to be an online game. You can't have everything be massive 4K textures. How are they going to do this sort of stuff? Could be floating textures, probably is floating textures. But this little painted yellow section here, again, it's probably just a piece of geometry that has an alpha map applied to it for this little yellow section. It could be that. Now, I'm also thinking about this in an Unreal Engine kind of way. Now, Bungie use their own proprietary engine for this, so they might be able to do certain things. They might have things built in because they're going to be building these things for the internet, because they know the platform limitations. They might build their own engine to do certain things. But I'm making assumptions. Thinking about the Unreal Engine. So yeah, all these little circles, all these little orange or yellow lines, they're all going to be floating meshes. Lots and lots of floating meshes. And they got this little bit here. It's like great. So again, if we can get closer to it, you've got physical geometry, which is the thicker metal lines here, but then you got all the little thin lines. Now I can never really get close to this, but I suspect that the little thin metal grates, these things that I'm working on right now, are an alpha map again. Just very, very nice high-res versions of them. Because again, I can't imagine, or again, I could be wrong. I'm just trying to think of limitations, and I can never really get close enough to them to make a judgment call. My camera always wigs out. But these could be alpha maps. I mean, it could be geometry as well. Remember, geometry is quite light, so these might actually be geometry. But even if they are geometry or alpha maps, whatever, what you do here is you'd have a section, so a square. So let's say this bit right here. This bit is a standard piece of this piece of geometry. So this is a standard square of geometry. And then I just repeat it across. So this is repeating 3.5 times, although it might be repeating 4 times because this metal piece here might just be placed on top of it. And then we repeat again, and then this metal piece is placed on top of it. You can kind of see just to the right of this metal piece, you've got a little bit of that metal, like this thicker metal section here sticking out. And you go across, and then you got that little metal bit there, and then you got another one of these. So I think these kind of corrugated metal sections here are placed on top. And again, this is just to be the geometry. And it'll all be designed so that things jigsaw in together. You know, none of this will be slapdash. Again, Bungie do really well with their environments and how beautiful things are. Now, what I really like are these geezers. And I think these really are just alpha maps on a big old flat texture that they then run a turbulence through to make it look like the wind's catching it. And these are just like safety nets. Dead simple. Dead simple. And there's probably easier ways of doing this as well. If you know that this is going to be, say, a 3x2 section of net, you could tile your texture appropriately so that really you've only got, you're tiling your texture 3 times by 2 times. If you get what I mean. Because maybe this is literally just like, there's only like this section here, maybe a 5x5 section here, that's a part of the texture, and then you're basically just repeating it. You know, I don't know. Again, I'm making assumptions. And then there's cool stuff going over materials. So like they've put this thing here on what we call a lerp, a linear interpolation, so you can blend between what would be the lightest version of this and then the darkest version of this as 2 separate materials. And you can, what it looks like they're doing is putting that through like some sort of pulse. So every few seconds it pulses. Okay, so what else inside this environment? So then you've got this landing platform thing here, which naughtily, the hunter colour is clipping through a section there. Naughty. But here, again, you see these on some sort of aircraft, on some aircraft carriers where you've got these boards which will lift up to, I don't know why they do it, but it's either to stop people getting blown off the edge of the ship, or it's to protect something. But basically, this panel that gets brought up, and jet planes behind a jet plane. So when the jet plane takes off, its jet wave from the back kind of goes into this platform, and it either gives it more propulsion, or it protects it, or it protects people, whatever. But you can see here, because you got these like danger arrow lines and what looks to be some kind of clamp there. This reminds me of those, so I can imagine that these would like go up, and if this is a landing platform, maybe something is here, and you put the jet, you jet out like that, like blast doors kind of thing. Essentially, I don't know. I don't know why I'm finding that quite hard to explain. But yeah, maybe these are like blast shields that you lift up, and maybe these were in the game at one point that I've never seen them being used. And I've been playing for a while. But yeah, again, dead simple. We're getting those little circle things appear again. So what's happening here is probably one of these is getting made, and then it's just being duplicated over. And then they put some nice decals on for like, you see it's got like an oil stain on this one. This would be like a decal that they put on to just break up the monotony. Now one thing in this environment which I love, and I can never really get my head around how they've done it, is the colours on the floor here. So from, if we can actually see it from here, boop it up, boop it up. So this void in the middle here, big old drop, it's not just a right angle. It's not a right angle rectangle. It flares out, so it's thinner up there and it gets wider out there. So it's a big old like triangle shape, and you get these colours that run like a path around it, again guiding the player. But you've got things as well, and all this is probably easier than I'm making it out. But you've got these, and this is probably some kind of decal, maybe two decals, like one decal which is a circle, and then another decal which is the numbers on the inside. But then you got this path, which starts off as like these chevron patterns up here. It's nice and wide. It traces the stairs here, but it traces it so cleanly. You can't see any polygons in them. Like that, and then it comes down like this. Now, is this some kind of really nice decal, or is this just a massive texture? I don't think it's a massive texture because it's so clean, and even on an online game, the normal maps are really kicking off. You got this beautiful little splash of water on the ground there. So that's always confused me a little bit. Not confused me, sorry. Intrigued me. For how they've done it. I'd love to talk to some of the developers about how they did this kind of stuff. And of course, some Guardian Games stuff that they just kind of clip in. Nice little map. But again, when we're looking back at the modular modelling stuff, there's still tons of modular modelling. There's these little tabards here which do nice little swinging things. They kind of gust with the wind. You got that flag up there. These are all just basically bits that you can pick up and put whatever you want. These guardrails here, same jazz. So you've probably got some kind of corner piece here. Possibly, I mean, I can't go in first person in this environment, but you possibly got some kind of corner piece here which you then repeat. Because I'm looking at the repetition, the evenness of all these like vertical sections of the handrail, and it's a little bit wonky here. Like you got this corner piece here, and then it's a really weird little step, and then it kind of widens out. Right, sounds up again, so maybe it's corner piece there. Like you've got this little straight line piece there, which is maybe a bit of a giveaway. That happens on. Kind of happens on both sides. This one's a bit short, but also this ends in a, like the pipe actually ends at that point where the pipe or the handrail kind of continues round on that one on the left hand side there. But this will still be like sections of handrail that just with some logical thinking you can use, like the lattice deformer. You can use just generally, if it's just two, like a bunch of vertexes on one end, nothing in the middle, then a bunch of vertexes on the right hand side. You could basically just grab one end and move it up, and the amount that you need it. But they're quite fun. Lots of fun stuff to break up the floor as well. So you got these little grates that'll break the floor a little bit. Of course, you got this. I mean, this is probably a decal. This big chevron is probably a decal of some variety. And again, another one of these weird, I really want to know how they've done it, kind of curvy things. Yeah, yeah. And generally this environment has a lot of what you'd expect modular modelling to have in these more man-made, a little bit old worldy, because this is kind of I don't know where we are in the world, but this gives me my kind of Moroccan vibes. You know, just like a lot of mosaic stuff and stone flooring. So in here, past the stairs, obviously, these stairs are going to be obviously. It's quite obvious how these stairs are modular. But then you got these big old floor sections with this little floor tile section here, and then the bigger floor section. So this runner that goes around the side, it's a bit hard to see possibly, but right, I'm standing on it right now. Like that is like little marble runner kind of thing. And then you got the big old stones. Right, so now I can see the repeating pattern. So if we look at, I'm literally stood on it right now, this big square. So the square is just to my right there. If you look up, you'll be able to see it again, then again and again. You see that like thicker line that appears as we look up vertically. So that's how a repeat is. Okay, so then here I can see this little, just to the right of me here, of my foot, there's like a little dark bump. And then if you look up, you can see that little dark bump again and again and again and again. Okay, so I can't quite tell where the repeat actually is, but you can tell that's a repeating pattern. These are really fun to make. These little like pillars with mosaics, these are going to be really fun to make. Because especially if it's mosaics, you can have this grouting line be the texture seam, and so you'll never really have a texture seam ever. And you can just make it look really kind of simple, and that'd actually be a really fun one to make in either Photoshop or in Substance Painter as an exercise. Because you've just got to know the pattern you're going to make. You're going to know in what quality. So if it's brand new, then it's not going to miss any pieces. But this has been around for a while and it's missing some little squares. So how are you going to approach that? That'd be quite fun. In fact, I might do that as a little exercise myself, making a little mosaic pattern in possibly Photoshop, possibly Substance Painter. I don't know. But you can see the exact same one there, just being on where on there, obviously you're wrapping it around a cylinder. There, you're just on a flat plane. And those are really basic examples of it. Reminiscent of Control here, we've got big concrete walls, so you can imagine how that's been tiled. And then you've got these windows that break it up. And then stuff just to break it up in general. So here's a nice example of a decal where you're kind of staining the floor around this area. Which this could be a heavily semi-transparent element around this grate, this girder. That just makes it look like, you know, water's collected and kind of gone a bit stagnant and stained the floor. More stairs, more repetition, easy. So again, these handrails, you could either repeat them every one, so you could say that's a repeat, then that's a repeat, then that's a repeat, then that's a repeat. Or you could do it in two, so 1, 2, and then you repeat 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because this is 6, so you could either do 1 repeat, or you could do 2 repeat, or you could do 3 repeat, and just do 2 sections. I don't know. So I'm looking on these stairs as well. I'm looking at these vertical lines on the stairs that hopefully are coming through on the video. So yeah, so there's tons of stuff in the tower that you can see. Tons of really nice stuff. But it's all very man-made. There's sci-fi and then there's old world. Like this old tunnel. It's like a lot like the old London Underground, which is out of use now. And then it's mixed with these sci-fi elements and there's some like Middle Eastern, Moroccan kind of vibes. Lots of mosaic, like beautiful mosaic here. Which again, this blue mosaic which is wrapping around here will be straight. It'll be a straight piece of mosaic. It'll be on what we call a trim sheet. Actually, this is a great place for trim sheets. I might come back here when I do the trim sheet video. And what they're doing is they're just bending it around the surface. Because you can kind of see how these little shapes on the left and right side are very untouched, they're very regular. But then as they get to the top and go around the top, you can kind of see that they warp a little bit, ever so slightly. And that's because that's a straight pattern that's been kind of warped and curved around something. And then you've got this really nice, right there in the middle of the screen, where there's like this like terracotta archway motif, which is again bending round. This is from something what we call a trim sheet, which is going to come up in another video. But yeah, this is a cool environment. It's a tower. There's lots of stuff to explore. But I'm going to take to somewhere which is kind of polar opposite to this. We're going to go to a weird place where everything's a bit left of center. Okay, so now you're in the Witch Queen's throne world. I'm just going to fly over to an area and I'll talk to you while we're flying. So this is a realm which everything is being created by the Witch Queen, and you start off in what we call the miasma. It's all this like swampy organic environment here. Modularly, this is more like the organic modular stuff, where a lot of these rocks are basically just big rocks that you slam in, rotate, slightly change the scale, and then just things. Again, the engine can do some cool stuff, and I'm presuming that they do this kind of stuff. You can basically take a bit of geometry and say, I apply this material in the x-axis, on the z-axis, or apply a weight paint, not weight paint, vertex paint material in one direction. Kind of like what we do inside Substance Painter with the light generator, where you can basically produce light in one direction. The stuff you can do with this, like moss will always grow on the tops of stuff. Again, I'm making an assumption. So, but what I want to show you is here. So now we've got into this world where everything's a little bit medieval. We've got towers, we've got little man-made gardens. Oop, don't shoot me. We've got the same elements that you'd expect to see in a human world, but now they're just a little bit different. So let me dispatch of these bad people. There we go. Boom. So yeah, you've got the same stuff you'd expect to see in a man-made environment, but because this is the aesthetic of the Witch Queen, everything's spiky, everything's this beautiful bluey, greeny white mixed with this like dark maroon red. I love this kind of color palette, this contrast. Look, by the way, look at the skyboxes of Destiny. You know, people slag Destiny off, but the skyboxes are some of the best in the world. Absolutely beautiful. Now, the Witch Queen is a really great example of an online game which looks really good until you look a bit closer. Because there's so much stuff happening now in this environment that things are a bit more easier or more noticeable to break. You know, inside the tower, everything's quite simple, and it can be very easy to hide a lot of stuff. But here, because you got a lot of these very towering structures and a lot of these spiky elements, there's a lot of stuff going on that a lot of the time you can defeat it quite easily. And a good place is right there. Look at that. So what you've got is you've got one of these bladey kind of tower sections up here. They're literally just smashed into another kind of vaulted tower section, which admittedly this is ripped straight from the moon. I think we'll do a quick jump on the moon to show you some stuff after this one. But you can see there that you've got this like square tower section, and then literally this little bladed section is just smashed in. There's no real care being taken in this area. And even in this texture, it's just repeated text on both sides. It's just a repeat texture. But again, remember, this is an online game, so it's got to be optimized. And generally, when people are flying through this environment, they're going to be going zoom, 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 zoom. They're not going to notice that stuff, are they? Stuff like this. So you can see, again, this little floor motif thing here is getting just smashed in there. People aren't going to notice it. It's only us nerds that see it. But you can see how they've done it. They've basically got these big, like, star-shaped floor patterns, and then they've got this, almost like a bit of a emblem kind of pattern there, and then they've got a big flat surface. And they just stack this kind of stuff on. Oh, I can see there, they've got, oh, you know what, that's actually quite naff, that, when you look at it. So you've got this floor pattern here, this star pattern, I should say, sorry, not floor pattern. Jump on, I think. There we go. So you got this little star pattern here, and then you got that little star pattern there. But then you've got one right there. But then in the middle, for some reason, they've put this little raised section in there. But it just carries the exact same texture of what's in the middle. Oh, no, actually, that's on every one of them. Oh, I see now. Okay. Even I'm learning a little bit today. So yeah, this section here is literally just this. Oh, there's another one over there. Look at that. Oh, no, it's slightly different. This is more of a... There's two little spikes on the edge, possibly. Oh, this looks like... Interesting. So this looks like they've smashed a couple of different elements together to make this thing. Because I'm seeing this circle thing in the middle there, but then when I look here, I'm seeing that the geometry is crossing over weirdly. So there might be like a triangle piece or something somewhere. And they've just basically made this like circle piece with the two sharp corners. Interesting. That's quite interesting. Again, more of these floor panels. So I'm actually seeing a few design motifs. These flat floor panels that'll be in star shapes, circle shapes, some kind of triangle shape. You've got that dude there, which is just that dude there. Oh no, maybe not. No. But the same thing, this is basically just a floor panel which has a grate in the middle of it. There's another one of those circles with the two wings on the edge. So you can see they do things a little bit differently here. It's maybe a little bit more slapdash because, you know, again, it's an online game. You've not got a massive turnaround for this kind of stuff. It's a fast-paced game. People don't necessarily care too much. It's the overall aesthetic people care about. And you might have to do rapid prototyping. You know, you don't have the time or maybe the data budget to make everything absolutely perfectly bespoke and motifed. So you do some workarounds. You know, you find some objects and you smash them together. You take some objects and you just place 3 of them on top of each other to make this. And I've only just noticed that. Because these must go deep, because you can see how deep that goes there. These must go a little bit deep. Interesting. And then if you look at this kind of stuff as well, you can see that there is a pattern, like there's a gap there. There's also a gap there. So these little spiky dudes there, can I find a texture seam on any of those? Oh, the points of them are a bit weird. So you see there. So, you know, when you look closer at stuff, you can see the modularity more obvious in a game like this because it's an online game. And again, some of these little floor. So yeah, there must be a bunch of these being made with the same kind of shape on the bottom. And in fact, this looks a bit stretched in some places, and it looks a bit compressed in other places. Oh, you can see there. Yeah, that's a texture seam right there. There's a texture seam right there. So that's 1/4. Okay, so I can't see a texture seam there. Oh, I got a texture seam there. Okay, so yeah, not sure how they built those. And there's a few bespoke pieces. Like these bits look very bespoke, like built for purpose. You got a lot of this as well. So you got these walkways, which on one side you'll have the big spikes, on one side you'll have the small spikes. I believe they're probably the same here. Oh, okay. So these have the big spikes on the inside, on the outside, but don't have anything on the inside. So I'm wondering if we can see how they've done that. Are these small spikes brought in afterwards? Oh, maybe. Okay, so I'm seeing the big spikes here, and I'm seeing where the texture ends there. So I'm thinking possibly this is just an added section on the back just to give it a bit of extra shape. Yeah, this looks thinner. Yeah, okay, yeah, I think that's how they've done it. So you've got this piece there and this piece there. Oh. Okay, so Destiny just crashed, so give me a sec. Okay, so apparently Destiny's going to get brought offline for maintenance soon, so I'll try and rush this next bit. Okay, so we saw some examples of some quite nice modular modelling, quite obvious ones as well. Sometimes the obvious stuff is nice because it shows you how people have constructed stuff. So you saw how they used the larger spike section there on both the straight section and on the plant bed section. So the plant bed section is obviously just facing outwards, but on the long section that's kind of flanking the stairs, they have little spikes on the inside to just kind of shape it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to quickly see if I can rush to where I want to go, and I'll keep this rolling because, you know, maybe it's fun to see how cool and crap I am at this game. And I'm still getting used to this new Sparrow. Okay, So this is Neo Mundo. This is my least favourite part of the game aesthetically. It's set on Neptune. I think it looks very tacky. It looks very. I think they're trying to go for like the 80s vibe, and I've never liked the 80s aesthetic. But there is a section of this level over here to the left. You can see the big looming head, which has a very cool aesthetic to it. I just need to get there, and hopefully I'll be able to get in. Oh, let me through. Right, how do I get in there? I'm lost already. Oh, I'm already there. Cool, we can get in. So this is, in the game, you'll know, for those who play it, you've got the witness. You've got the triangle, and you got the pyramid, then you got the witness. So you got the traveller, and then you got the witness. The traveller is a big circle. It's a big ball. But the witness travels in pyramids. So you've got circular, and then you've got spiky. The witness is all about... aesthetically, it's all about consistency. It's very reminiscent of the control stuff. You know, a lot of very, very straight lines. On these flat walls, you've just got some cool kind of motifs. On the ground, you've got this slowly shifting kind of pattern. It's like weird marble. And you've got a lot of artwork in this kind of environment. So this guy's got a lot of artwork. Beautiful lighting. But these environments are full of cool design motifs. There we go. So we get through again. There we go. Right. So in these environments, you've got these cool blends currently of this decadent Roman emperor, which was Callus, or Romanesque emperor of Callus, and then you've got the witness. So the decadence is obviously the gold, all these gold blocks and stuff. You've got these like very Romanesque kind of plates and vases, but again, when you look at those, incredibly simple, and these blocks and piles of gold, very, very simple. And that's juxtaposed by the witnesses stuff, which is everything else. So these blocks of weird amber-like rock, almost like part sculpted. Like this kind of reminds me of a horse a little bit. Yeah, it's a horse, like a part sculpted horse, a part sculpted person there reaching up. Again, this part sculpted person. Everything's very weird. And you got these. So these are almost like frozen in carbonite examples of stuff. I'm not sure how they've done it. I'd love to know how they did these because they look very cool. But you got examples of stuff. So you got like what looks to be not cobalt. The big round of people. Oh my god, I've just killed a bunch and I can't remember the name. What is your name? Them guys. And then you've got stuff which might be a hive, but then you've got... No, this guy might be a hive. No, that looks like a fallen. I can see extra arms. So he's got an elixir. This is maybe an egg. So you got all of this weird stuff with the Cabal. That's it, the Cabal. Yeah, so these kind of frames with like amberite kind of things suspended in animation. These cool, abstract, shiny designs. You know, this is the aesthetic of the witness. Again, it's kind of reminiscent of some of the stuff that's in Control, blocks, geometry. You know, a majority of it's right angle. There's obviously a few bits that are kind of like the half sculpted stuff, and some of these rocks look a bit knackered. But a lot of it's this segmented stuff as well. You can see the cross section of the wall of the flooring there's got this square motif. Same thing here, same kind of idea there, square motif. But as you look at that, you can see that because it's on this triangle, the squares don't fit the triangle. They don't go along with the triangle, so they're being cut off as they go down. Same thing for these. So what I'm thinking is this material and this material, so the end grain of, or the end of these floor pieces, they'll have a material which they'll apply this onto. And this will probably be like a big tiling texture that just carries a lot of these uneven square kind of shapes, so they can basically put it anywhere. Again, it's that same thing that Scorn has to do, possibly, where because they've got so much environment and they've only got so much data. In the case of Scorn, I think it's because your team's only so big. They have to reuse the same texture over and over and over and over and over again, just in very interesting ways. And one way how that works is the way the levels are designed. If you don't allow the player to see the same thing too much, it means that when you see it more and more, when you see, as I'm walking around this environment, I'm seeing those same things suspended in amber all over the shop, but I don't see them everywhere. I just see them in some places. Like over there, for instance, so they don't get boring to me. And it's a change of color as well, so we'll go from like a blue to a gold area to a blue area again. These beautiful lights as well that pop up every now and then. And then we're into another one of those rooms. So again, it's the mixture of this callous guy, which is an analog for the Roman Emperor kind of stuff, surrounded by the Witness, which is this very modern right angle brutalist. So like for instance here you've got Callus either side with these plates and stuff, but then in the middle you've got the Witness, you've got the pyramid with these more like symbolic shapes, a lot of cubes. So you got these beautiful cubes behind these pots, again more alabaster, more of these half sculpted subjects. This is all the Witness, and again you got like more Witness here. Now look at some of these textures as well. Look at how kind of crazy and warped these textures are, because it's just filler for an environment like this. It's an online game. You don't need too much information, or you can't have too much information. So it's just about suggesting what's going on. And then you've got really weird stuff like this, which is just kind of like the same objects smashed into each other a bunch of times. But then they've done it where you can put a hole in it. I just like, that's such a weird little thing that they created there for poops and giggles. Again, it's kind of all the kind of like the artifacts, the artwork in here is all that is Witness. The Witnesses is all just a little bit weird. But then all Callus's stuff, like I've been saying, is ostentatious. It's opulent. It's very Roman. Like all this room is very Roman because you got the drapery. This drapery, dead easy to do. The texture is just basically an omnidirectional text. No, sorry, a unidirectional texture. This gold either side with the pattern in the middle. And then we're back to Callus. So we're back to Witness. Do I go over there? No, I'll go over there. I go up there. So this is all I can really show you past this point because, like I said, the servers are going to get brought off soon. I don't know what time it is. But as you can see here, the thing with Destiny, and we're going to look at Destiny, more and more as you're getting taught by me, because it's something I always go back to. Destiny is a great example of the different kind of things you can do. I mean, in some of the more recent seasons, we've got stuff which is like old. Actually, see if I can get there before I'm saying this. Let's see if I can get to the new dungeon before the reset. So this new dungeon it's an old castle. So far in this game we've had man-made environments with that Moroccan twist in the tower. We've had the opulent castle stuff, but the weird opulent castle stuff of the Witch Queen, which is all the white environment with the red plants. We've looked at the opulence of Callus with all like the Roman assets, all like the vases and plates, but then with the environment of the Watcher, or the Witness. Yeah, the Witness, which is triangle. It's dark, it's sharp, it's right angles, it's weird things suspended in amber and stuff. Now this, we're going way back in time. This, I don't know if it is directly inspired by, but this reminds me of Kaer Morhen from The Witcher. But I have to jump around to get there. So while I'm getting there, let's have a bit of a chat about stuff. So, these environments. Oh, I'm dead. These environments are very, very well crafted, but not impossible to make at all. They're very possible to make. You've just got to really think about the things that you're making. When these people make their environments, they'll have a bunch of people who design the environments, and these are kind of like, the previs stuff. They don't really care about texture sizes. They don't really care about the assets that are going to go into it. They've just got like themes, and they've got ideas that they want to do, and then they'll go down the production line. Then people will break up the scene and be like, right, okay, so we're gonna have this in it, or maybe even the concept artists themselves will also do like, here's all the props that are going to be in there. Here's like all the vases. Here's all the little element pieces. Right. Don't fall down, Dave, this time. There you go. And that'll go through a few rounds, and then they'll decide all the props and stuff, and then they'll do the level design, which will go again through many different iterations. So they'll start off with like basic blocking, which is literally white boxes, and then they'll play through those. During that time, they might even have people designing aesthetic level layouts. So I'm trying to kill this guy so he doesn't kill me. You go through design all the levels. You go through designing, the boss areas. Because this game is all based around like combat mechanics, and especially for bosses, where you've got to think about the mechanics of the boss. So that's not our job. That's a game designer's job. But they will work alongside level designers to say, right, okay, phase 1 you do this, phase 2 you do this, and here's the general like mechanic of how to take the boss's shield off. They'll work with a level designer to then, like, okay, then so that we'll lay all these things out in a circle, and then that's how the player interacts with the whatever, and whatever. Right, go away. So now we're into the castle. This is what I wanted to show you. So now, in the same game, we've had 4 very, very different environments. This is a castle, straight up castle. And here you can really see the modular pieces. So you can obviously see the tiling textures being used in like this more cobbly stone area here, this more refined stone area here, which looks proper 3D, but then when you get close to it, you can see that it's just flat. Same for that one, it's just flat. You can really see when you look at the corner there that there should really be an indentation where the 2 rocks meet. There is none. It's just a flat thing. It's a cube with a bevel with a single segment in the middle. Dead simple. So yeah, dead simple. Using the same rocks, these same pillars everywhere. Done some cool stuff where it looks like they've done some vertex painting. Well, they have done in some areas, but in places you'll see that you got these little piles of rock, and these are crafted really well because they look like they blend into the floor, and they're really kind of well produced, and maybe they're actually part of the floor. But really, when you come up and look closer, you can see that actually they're not. They're just little bits of mounds that are placed in, but they're just taking time to make sure that they do blend in. And like I said, they vertex painted some frost here on the wall, so that it looks like this pile of snow is frosting up this area. Stuff we can't necessarily do inside Substance Painter as easy. In Sketchfab as easy, but these are things that people do. It's a nice little environment. So I can't go too far in this because we're right up to the boss, and I can't do that on a video. But again, here we've got a lot of modular environment pieces. We've got this nice cracked flooring. We've got some really nice, I love the touch of the sawdust in places. That's a nice little touch. Those tiles of sawdust. Again, you look at how that connects to the ground. Some of them you can really see it's just sharp, merges through the floor. Some of it's just like really basic alpha mapping. Little piles of rocks. Breaks up the floor a little bit, hides some of the seams. The same. So we've seen this cobblestone used in the other room with a curved ceiling section there. But now we're using it for an actual flat wall section. Again, that nice concrete wall section, or the kind of like more like the blocks, broken up with more scatter, more things. These tubes here, which are kind of like, oh, should I have done that? Yes, these tubes Very, very simple geometry. Scatter stuff. Obviously, they would have had a lot of these assets in other places, so they can basically go, okay, I'm going to go to the Forsaken folder, and I'm going to grab all the Forsaken stuff and just basically fill this up. What else do we need? Right, we've never seen these iron cages before, so I'm going to make these iron cages. Okay, but a lot of this stuff is obviously going to be pre-built from other parts of the game. Drooping tabards, block surfaces, so they're suggesting that the map can go further on using some very basic modular modelling. So here we've got a bit of a wall, well, we've got a door frame, whoop, and then we've got a bit of a wall, and then you can kind of see it kind of crushes up there. The blocks get really kind of tight, and you can actually see a texture seam in there as well, because they've literally just got the geometry and then curved around the surface to make this bend. Like you can see the rocks there kind of get a bit naff. But that's fine. That's, you know, that's fine. You don't need everything to be absolutely perfect in a game like this. A lot of stuff can be hidden with light. You know, if you're in, this is a 3-man dungeon, and if you've run this already about 1,000,000 times, you're not gonna take time. You're gonna run through. You're gonna go through to the. You're gonna speed run stuff. So you don't need to make everything perfect. It's just cool to have cool lighting. You always make stuff to the best of your ability, knowing the restrictions of your platform and knowing the restrictions of your players. So again, these steps, again, you can probably do 2 steps or 3 steps, or like a group of like 10 steps as a group, and then just kind of duplicate it up. This floor, I bet, is a flat piece of wall that they've just angled, possibly, and then put the stairs on top of it. Nice little floor heater there, which is nice. And they're into the boss section, so this is where I can't go any further. So this environment's really nice because it's like old-fashioned buildings in a very obviously sci-fi modern game. But the same kind of stuff applies to this. All you have to do is look around these environments. You'll see the same textures being used in straight areas and curved areas. You'll see, you know, when you really look at the pillars and stuff, you'll see that they're actually really basic. It's just a good use of textures. It's a good use of level design. It's a good use of lighting. It's actually all really simple to create. The thing that makes this hard is just on the scale in which you have to create. So you have to create loads of stuff. You have to answer every geometric problem that's going to be asked of you. So for instance, you've got this portcullis here which needs to have the recesses there, so you need to rebuild that. But again, the materials are going to be stuff that you've used already. You'll be using tiling textures all the time. You know, you've got doors, so you need a door frame in there. You need a wooden door. You need to have hinges. You need to have stuff to make it look realistic. And then if you are building everything from scratch, in this case, you've got the old castle, which has got its, you know, maybe 10 design features in it. But then in this case, you've got the Forsaken, which they've got their own design aesthetic. So they've moved in, and all these spikes and skulls, and then these tabards, that's all to do with them. All these cages and these wires hanging around, that's all to do with them. This guy over there, he's a Forsaken. Another fantastic thing that Bungie does as well, outside of their general level design, their skyboxes, is they love to suggest stuff. They love to what they call it, to telegraph stuff. So that's where the last boss is, and we actually fight the boss on that. And having the first boss you go through, and that's the first time you see that, and you got that guy in the way. It telegraphs you where you're going. It kind of, I forgot it. There's a word for it. I forgot what it is. But it's really good, really, really good. So I'm wondering if I could fit one last very, very simple sci-fi environment in before it gets shut down. This is a good thing as well. So on this flat wall, you might think, yeah, that looks quite nice, but to make it an extra little bit betterer, what you can do as well is make individual rocks and then just UV them and move the UV over one of these rocks on the texture. So you're still pulling from the same texture. It's just that you're making a 3D version of it just for those bits. And this isn't being extracted from the actual mesh. This will be a separate mesh on its own that they place in to make it look like, some of these rocks are uneven. And all they've got to do is, again, model it, make sure it's the same size as that rock section, UV it, and then move that UV over that rock section, and then move that rock section over one of the other, so you can, you'd move it over that section there, so make that rock look like it comes out a little bit. Now this is where working to consistent textile densities is incredibly important, because you've got to make sure that all these textures work with each other. You can't have this cobblestone texture here be super high resolution and absolutely beautiful, and have this more like rock stone built version be pixelated and low res, because it's not going to look good. So everything's got to be to the same textile density, which is where we do have to start thinking about not necessarily in the engine when we're building. Right, I'll take us to the next place while I'm explaining this, so I'm not wasting time. Not necessarily in the engine as in like I'm building to a 4 meter surface, so therefore I need to change 2 meters in the engine. No. What I'm thinking is, you've got to think about the real world materials that you're building. If you're building like a big stone section of wall like we've just looked at, you've got to think about, I'm building a 4 foot by 4 foot section. That's going to be a 4K texture. If it's 4 foot, it's 4K kind of thing. You could do an 8 foot section that would be 4K, which means a 4 foot section would be 2K, a 2 foot section would be 1K, that kind of stuff. So if you're building everything to a 4 foot section, then the other tiling texture, which is in the same textile density, will also have to be a 4 foot representation of that area. And then if you do something which is like a smaller piece, you've got to think about, okay, is that a 2 foot section or is that a 1 foot section? It doesn't need to be changed in the for now. This is stuff you should do in the second year, but just for now in the first year, don't think about the grid itself. Don't worry about changing the grid itself. Don't worry about working to those specifications in the engine in Maya. Just think about the textures. It's all about the textures. Okay. And I'll explain that much better in other classes, and I have already explained it. I think it's just trying to remember it and try not to. What I'm noticing is people have been doing stuff that I have said not to do, but I think one person does it, therefore everyone else does it, and it's proven to not be the best results, not give you the best results. For example, yes, while I'm getting to this place, I will remember where I need to go first. Oh, it's over here. On the scanner, I said not to model the vents in the back. Use a texture to do that, because it's going to look better. And then half of you have modeled them in, and that started by one person saying to model them in, and then everyone else listens to that person. I need people to really listen to what I'm saying, and I think one person has said something about modeling to the real world scale inside Maya, changing the scales, and then everyone has been asking me, how do I change the real world scale? And it's like, don't worry about the geometry. Just worry about the texture sizes. Okay, so we are in Europa, or we are on Europa, and we are in the super sci-fi environment. So what have we looked at? We've looked at, your general environment, which is your hub, a bit of a mixture of sci-fi and of kind of that Moroccan feel. We've looked at one castle, which is the Hive Castle, which is the Witch Queen's. Lots of spikes, but it's all still quite simple, but very stylistic. And then we looked at the Castle, which is like old school normal castle, which is all cobblestones and stuff. But then we've got environments like this. This is super sci-fi, and most people who want to become environment artists generally do at least one sci-fi corridor or one sci-fi environment. Now, if you think about the timeline of the human race, you think about things when we were building castles in the early days. Nothing was standardized. Nothing was, every time you hewed a stone, it'd always be different to the last stone that you hewed. Every time you made a chair, it'd always look different to the last chair you just made. It was only the birth of industrialization that we started being able to make the same thing over and over again to the same specifications. That meant that a lot of the old buildings were a little bit wobbly. Things were uneven. Things weren't always straight. Nothing really was based off a right angle. Things were made of stone and wood, and maybe even manure and straw to make walls. all that kind of jazz. We flip to this kind of era, which is like super futuristic, super standardization, super soft. Everything's going to be built to a specific scale. Everything's going to be modular. The biggest thing is everything's modular in these environments. And if we're not careful, things can actually look very boring in these environments, because you could just make like one very simple wall section like that, and then just copy, and then you just get a load of blank walls. Same for this bit. You could just basically make like this bit right here, and just duplicate this white curved wall. Yeah, you've got a nice silhouette to the wall where it's like the flat floor, and then you got this nice 45-degree angle thing, and then you got a wall, then you got a 45-degree angle, then you got a roof, and that's cool. But then it's still going to be the same kind of texture throughout. That's where you start adding these little modular pieces. So like this seating area here isn't part of this wall. It would literally just be placed in front of. These little symbols here, again, they won't be part of the wall. They'll be just placed on top of. That's that floating textures we were talking about. This little thing here, it's a floating texture. It just looks like it's part of the mesh. That's all. And then you take one of these pieces, and then as long as you don't change the silhouette, you don't change the outside, you can then mess around with the inside. So then you can make bits like this, which are these like cool see-through, you can see behind the scenes kind of thing with pipes and stuff. It just changes the way the environment flows. And then you're able to make these really nice curves. So one thing that sci-fi does really well, in like Elysium style sci-fi, are curves. Whoop. And again, another example of just taking one of those pieces of wall and then just changing it. Now what they also do here is they, in places, blend it into the floor. It's not connected, it's just very well built. So it looks like it's blended into the floor. So you see here another great example of loads of walls that are just basically the same shape, but you could make those look very boring by just having like simple flat elements on them. So what they've done here is made a few different variations, and most of this information again is not actually there physically. It's just this floating texture. So like this bit here, it's just a floating texture. This bit here is just a floating texture. That little indentation there, just a floating texture. Like this bit here is actual geometry. So they would have taken a section of wall and then made kind of like hatch shape. But then it's like, oh, I'm just like kind of pacing back and forth. And you can see there's some weird kind of stuff going on with the texture, which is interesting. And the flooring again, so they got, simple flooring, but in the middle they decided just to mess it up a little bit and give you the see-through. They're telling a story. Props. So this is an online game as well. So one thing that's not going to happen is any kind of props moving around. So I'm walking into this, I'm throwing a grenade at it, I'm shooting it. Nothing's ever going to move. Because imagine, one, if everything was movable, everything would be destroyed all the time. But two, if you've got physics, live physics going off in a game like that, and things naturally bounce around, it can be very demanding to a game like this. Yes, it might work in a game like Apex or Overwatch, where you've got a limited amount of people in a map which is not connected to anyone else. So you can blow that level up, you can smash that level up, because once those players leave, you delete that level, and it doesn't really impact anyone. And everyone's already like what we call cached in that information. All that physics have already been cached. This, however, because it's like a drop in, drop out live service kind of thing, not so much. Now all they've done here is started to introduce a little bit of the extra bit of geometry. So, oh yeah, there is some live objects in, some physics objects in here, but not very important ones. So they've started to introduce other bits of geometry here. So they're introducing a different shape language for the Elixir. And always reminding us that we are on Europa. So these long shards, again, really simple. Some of these you can see there, that's just really basic geometry. Look at that. That's just like kind of crap. That's like corrugated iron. That I'm like talking about this here, where it's like just zigzags. That's horrible. But who cares? Because you don't look at it like this generally, do you? All these bits of snow are just basically big soft bits of geometry that you're able to walk on. Again, all these are alpha maps. So all they're going to do, not alpha maps, alpha and normal maps. So it's basically going to say if player walks on do map. Now I'm not going to bother doing it in the video, but I'm wondering if, depending, actually no, let's give it a try. I'm going to change my pants. I wonder if it gives me different foot patterns. No, I don't think it does. No, okay. So I thought depending on the pants you're wearing, you get better different foot patterns, but you don't footprints, but you don't. So yeah, fantastic environments here. The modular modeling you can see everywhere. It's just the more like sci-fi you go, the easier the modular modeling is, because again, as long as you stick within the parameters of like your basic wall is going to be 8 meters, 18 units wide. Your wall is going to be by standard 32 units high. You know, if you stick to these parameters, you can jigsaw stuff together really easily. And then if you take half of that, quarter of that, a third of that, if you go to these very, very even mathematical divisions, it's really easy to build these environments. The hard part is just making sure that you're maintaining that so that you don't have any things that, you know, it's an obvious seam when you're doing these big curved wall sections, that you don't have any obvious like mismatched areas like that, for instance, where you've got this piece of geometry ending and another piece starting. You don't want to have one like annoyingly slightly off. You want to make sure everything fits within itself, which after a bit of practice is really easy. It just takes a little bit of logical thinking. But like I said, sci-fi is one of the easiest ones to do because it's all about modular designs. You know, if you're doing a corridor, you're going to have a bulkhead, you're going to have some flooring. You've got to think of the utilitarianism of it. So you're going to have to access behind a screen to get to pipes or to get to, you know, wires or something. So you're always going to have that. If you look at stuff like the ISS and see how that's been built, every panel accesses something. You got to have that. It's literally built like a Lego kit, and this is built like a Lego kit. So you've got the same kind of designs everywhere. These curved walls, right? One there. All these outward curved walls, and then because you got convex curved walls, and then you got concave curved walls here. You know, once you do one of them, you'll know how to do the other one because it's the same kind of numbers that are being used. These stairs are going to be used everywhere. I mean, these very, very simple stairs. They're just basically floating with this like frame underneath it. You know, same ones there. They're just a bit longer. So maybe you've got a group of 4 stairs or a group of 10 stairs, and you're basically just doing one set there and then another set there. And as long as they look like they're connected to each other, who cares? You don't see the separation between the two groups. You just see a bunch of stairs. Now here, you could look at stuff like this on the floor and think, right, how have they made this? Again, thinking about that, breaking everything down into units. Maybe this floor piece here is 32 units wide by, I don't know, 12 units long, something like that. Okay, well, this floor piece here, when we walk in, this is going to be 32 units wide. But then you've got this wall which is interrupting it here. So what we don't see is the wall continues on behind the floor. Sorry, continues on behind this wall. We just don't see it because it's hidden away. So these two pieces could be the exact same piece of geometry, just with slightly different textures on them. And then we've got this 32 by 4 unit here, which is going up and around. You know, you could do these through geometry, or you could do these, everything here is just one big flat piece of geometry, but they've done these lines here through floating textures. So this would be a simple texture with a simple normal map pushing inwards, a simple opacity map, and then you lay it out in like these little thin strips so that it looks like there's a panel line there when really there's not. Same for these little guys here, these little bumps. These would be, they don't have any colours on them because it just carries the same colour as what's on here. But all you've got there is opacity, so you don't see anything behind it. You just see the bump itself. And then a normal map, which is raising them up, so it looks like a bit of a grip. Same for this little triangle dude in the middle. The only bit of texture here is one of these little triangle guys. Yeah, pretty much, yeah, one of these little triangle guys. There could be one set for this little grippy section, then one set for this little section here, and then one set. So you're going to learn about that as time goes on. And in fact, I'm walking around this, and I think I can see how much this is actually off the surface. It's slightly off the surface, ever so slightly. So yeah, environments like these, they look complex, and when I've been explaining them, they might still seem complex. But trust me, when all this stuff is just the same piece of geometry repeated over and over again, or a very flat piece of geometry with some simple little tricks on it, rarely in environments like this would you have bespoke pieces. This is a bespoke piece. Or maybe it's not. I mean, this is just a bespoke piece because it's two big or three big cylinders in a room. But then we might see this in other parts of the map. In fact, this top here might be from a platform that we jump on later on. Again, in environments like this, there's very rarely like super bespoke, you're only going to see it once kind of things. It's all about telling a story and keeping it simple. It's clever how people make stuff look more complex than it is. But again, it's all smoke and mirrors. Okay? So hopefully this has shined a light on a bunch of stuff for you. Hopefully this has inspired you. Hopefully this has shown you some stuff. Oh, sorry, we've got one more to do. There's one more to go. But I'll just say now, before I end the video anyway, hopefully this has inspired you so far and shown you a bit further into, how games are made and how environments are kind of put together. So we've had Control, single player game, relatively new, very high fidelity, very realistic, relies on a lot of materials. A lot of the geometry is very simple, of the actual environment itself, a lot of simple geometry with really good materials. And then we had Scorn, a very new single player game, but it's a flip side. They rely on a lot of very complex geometry with some very interesting texture approaches, very interesting texture approaches to make their environments look the way they do, to follow that Geiger aesthetic as close as they can. Very complex, but again, behind the scenes there's going to be some things that make it a lot easier for them to produce, using the same texture and over again in just clever ways, really. D2 or Destiny 2, game that's getting on a little bit. It's an online game, so it's showing its age a little bit. It has to be optimized to a great amount because of the way it runs, the game that it is. It's an online game. It's a live online game, so you don't just go into a level with a predetermined amount of people in a sealed off level as well. Though you can move around maps and you can just bump into anyone. People can come in and out of your environments. People can join your game. People can join your fire team. So you've got this constantly live kind of environment happening. So there's got to be an incredible amount of optimization inside there. But they still make it look super sick. And the last one is going to be Fable 2. So we're going well back in time. Okay, so now we're in Fable, and I can slow it down a little bit. I was kind of rushing back at the back end of that then, because I was thinking, oh god, when is Destiny going to kick me off? But here we are in Fable. Now, Fable. So I just looked at how old Fable is. Fable was released in 2004, so this game is 20 years old. I was 15 when this came out, and this came out on the Xbox. So this is older than some of you. Like I said, this is a very old game. It's a single-player game, no multiplayer at all. It's a very stylized game. You might have played Fable 2 or Fable 3. Some of you might have even played Fable 1. It's one of my favorite games, like I said. It's very old, obviously. It's really showing its age. It is a single-player, so we've not got any multiplayer crap to deal with. No optimization for online. The optimization from this came from the restrictions of the software. I believe this was an Xbox release first, and then got ported to PC later on. And then I think there was a remaster when they did the anniversary. This is the anniversary edition. It's got expansions and stuff. But I believe they did the anniversary edition with a little bit of resin up, refining of some textures, making some of the models a bit betterer. Because, yeah, it's not a bad looking game for its age as well. Not a bad looking game at all. But let's have a look at some stuff. So we're in Knothole Glade here, which is a... I feel like it's themed after semi-Native American, but then semi... like European Scandinavian-y. It's a real kind of mishmash of designs. Yeah, you can really see how stylized this game is. Oh, the style is so cool. I do love it. A lot of these props are going to be bespoke props as well in this kind of environment. Modular modeling was a thing back then, obviously, but not as much. But in here, you've got some decent examples of modular modeling. So a lot of modular modeling, maybe these days, is done actually in engine. So you're building the stuff in engine. Some of this stuff would probably be built in the software, like Maya, for instance, and then brought in as kind of like a prefabricated unit after it's been built using modular pieces. So right here, for instance, you've got these pillars, which have got some really kind of wacky textures on them. If you really pay attention, the textures are really kind of weird and wacky. Definitely not the textures I think were meant to be applied. You can see like they've got this like strip, it's like wooden plank strips on one side, and it's, I'm not sure. Yeah, like the textures just don't make sense when you really look at them. Really terrible texture seams. I can't remember back to when I was 15 and if this is what the textures used to look like. This might be something that has happened and no one's really cleaned it up. Or maybe this was the original texture. Because this looks like I'm looking at a trim sheet that's just been rush applied to a piece of geometry. But you can really see how kind of crap that texture is. And in this environment, you can see again. Why would you have across this horizontal beam just above my head? Why would you have this horizontal beam with vertical planks? It makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. You can see that he's got this like studded plank element on this little sign in front of me, or this little like panel. Then directly above it, you've got that same pan, like that same wooden kind of like studded paneling. So they were using what they had to the best of their ability. Shut up. Talking at me. So yeah, they had a few tiling textures and a few trim sheets, and they had to use these to the best of their ability. It means that they had to rely on the player to not care a lot of the time. Like things like that, like those little pillars, which again I've never actually noticed until today, that they've literally just got like the shittest texture I've ever seen on. Like it's definitely not meant to be that. It doesn't make any sense, that texture whatsoever. But they probably didn't have any more budget for more textures. But like I said, there is a lot of bespoke texture in this. One modular piece here, you've got these three little floor pieces, like these little base pieces, 1, 2, 3, and then you got 2 here, 1, 2, where the statue is. So, they're a little bit of modular modeling. You can get these little totem bases. Oh, there's like a little piece there as well. So a little bit of modular modeling there. I can kind of see. These textures look pretty high res for the day as well. Because even the anniversary edition is getting on a bit now. It might be 10 years old, the anniversary edition. Like 10 years anniversary. But you can see like these textures on the roofs are actually pretty stretched across the edges. So they would have been tiled on a square. And they would have been applied to this model and then fixed to the UVs, essentially. So yeah, Knothole Glades, a lot of the same stuff. A lot of these like little wooden stakes, and you might have like 10 of these wooden stakes that you would make into a prefabricated fence, and then you'd bring that fence into the game, and then you'd like place these fence archetypes, these fence prefabs around. Again, you've got to respect the fact that back then, 20 years ago, that there just wasn't the power to do what we can do in engines these days. A lot of times you can basically draw a line, like a spline in the ground, and go apply this to this, and then it'll produce like a fence in that area from a list of like assets that we have already previously made. Same thing we did with speed tree. Like we can make trees very, very fast these days. I don't think speed tree was a thing back then, so all these trees would have been made by hand. But then there might only be like 20 trees, and they just spread them out a lot and rotate them and stuff. Cool foliage. So really old-fashioned foliage, but look at how the foliage hasn't really progressed that much. This foliage is still pretty much the same. Right, so now I've got to remember the controls. There you go. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go away from Knothole Glade, and we're going to go to the Heroes Guild, which is the hub world of this game. There's quite a lot of modular modelling in this, but again, remember this is an old game, that we weren't the best at doing modular modelling back then, but also it's very stylized, so they really are quite liberal and quite clever with how they did the modular modelling. But you can kind of tell by, if you look at the textures, look how smeared and pulled the textures are, you might be able to actually make it out. Because then we've got this texture right in front of me, which is like this square texture with like the orange corners. That's happening all around this place. You can see there, it's everywhere across these little orange sections. It's the exact same texture. It's just in some parts it gets a little bit stretched, like here at the top. It gets a little bit stretched because obviously they're slightly changing that arch. But that arch is probably, that arch there and that arch there are probably the exact same. It's just they grabbed a few of the vertexes on the front of it and pulled it forward to make a bit of different shape. Again, this environment might have been made in Maya, whatever, first, and then brought in. So this looks like a scaled down version of this, so it's possibly, this might be a scaled down version of the main archway there, a touch. But you can see one of the main repeating textures is this big old cobblestone that's all around the walls. Big old cobblestone. And that would have been made by hand. That would have been painted by hand. No Substance Painter back then. Substance Painter wouldn't have been made for another 15 years. Something like that. Great example of some modular modelling to fill an area. These bookcases are all identical. The only thing that's different is what's on the inside. So the main frame is the same, but then they would have changed what's going on the inside. But I'm wondering, can we see repeat? Okay, so I can see it boom straight away. So look at there, we've got these 3 books in this second shelf. These 3 books stacked on top of each other, and then to the left-hand side, you've got. Oh, it's behind my head. There you go. So you got that white book which is laid on its side, and then you've got those 3 stacked up books again. And then you got that book laid on its side. And then you got those 3 stacked up books again. Okay, so we've seen the repetition there. In those bookshelves, you've got 3 stack, 2 stack, 3 stack, 2 stack, 3 stack. Is the same here? Yep, same thing here. 3 stack, 2 stack, 3 stack. And even the books on the bottom shelf are the same because you can see the way that some are leaning on each other. It's all repeated. Lovely flooring as well. Another great example of grey tiling texture. In fact, that might be tiled over multiple versions. No, sorry. What am I trying to say? When I'm looking at this stone here, each one of these squares is tiled. There's no variation besides this one square here. Because I'm looking at all the different kind of like elements there are in this tiling texture, and it's the exact same on each one of them. So there's only one version of a tile, but it's tiled across loads. And it's not that obvious. You don't necessarily see it too much unless you look for it. And they've done a really nice thing of just cutting the environment. Oh god, you scared the crap out of me then. Bloody clapping person. Yeah, you've got the floor's been cut in a diagonal rather than a straight line or anything like that. It's cut in a diagonal. Makes it a bit more interesting. We'll go through here because this is a nice little fun area with some modular modelling. So again, really simple when you look at it. So what we've got here is an archway, or some sort of like, an archway, and some really simple kind of concrete hand raily kind of stuff here, but it's the same texture. Going the text that goes across there is the text that goes across there. Exactly same. And you've got that little nick in the geometry there, so it is actually a proper nick. Is there as well. I wonder if can we find it again, and it's there as well, and it not there anymore. Nice simple flooring again. That is probably, I'm trying to find an element on the floor. There's like a little just at the top of my head there. I see a little scratch in the floor, so I'm looking for that as well. Can I see that scratch again? Oh, I think it's there. Yeah, okay, so that's a scratch there. That's a scratch. Okay, so this is a 4x4 tile. Yeah, so each one of these is a 4x4 tile. Nice and simple. Nice and simple. Oh. Oh. There you go. Completely forgotten the controls of this game. And it's a nice little environment. So again, we're using these 4x4 tiles, but they're slightly scaled up, and maybe the normal map's a bit different on them. So even back then we had normal maps. Or did we? Are these a new addition to the anniversary? Or did we actually have normal maps back then? I can't remember. But you can see they've got the same kind of like orange and blue, or yellow and blue flooring. It's tiling again. Now this time, contrary to stuff like we did in Scorn, where when we have that circular plinth, they would have that bone texture kind of go in a circle and kind of bend around to kind of loop around it. This time we're laying it out just flat. You know, there's no change. All exactly the same, which is probably a bit easier. So they would have just modeled this. Yeah, they would have just modeled this, and then just made the UVs really big, essentially. So in here, some nice modular modeling, just on a round kind of like a round setup. So you've got a picture wall, and then you got some kind of plinth, and then you got a picture wall, and then you got some kind of plinth. Oh, in this case, you got a window, and then well, there's got a window section here. Then you got a picture wall, and then you got kind of some type of plinth or column. So you can see the same thing going round and again and again. So every two of these, you get a break. So you got two pictures break, two pictures break, two pictures break, or two pictures door, two pictures door, two pictures door. And I'm wondering what picture goes here. So yeah, really great examples of low poly games. I mean, these, I think in games nowadays, this wouldn't be as straight as this. I mean, there's like maybe 12, no, 15, maybe 20 edges going around this whole kind of sphere or hemisphere, whatever it is. Oh, this like ring. There we go. That's the right word. You know, like 15 to 20 edges going around each one of these. We might have this as like a much softer curve these days, or we might have more individual steps, like step sections, because these are just, there's no break to these steps. If you notice, there's no kind of like lines to denote different blocks of stone to sit in there. It's just all one continuous texture, and the flooring is just basically one continuous texture that they've just obviously cut out of a ring and moved up a little bit. You have so you have one column that's just duplicated around a lot. The hard part about this one is just getting the environment naturally coming up to a point of like this cathedral-esque kind of environment here. Not sure how they would have done that. But again, you've got this tiling texture of this big old like stone cobble wall thing that's just tiling continuously over the entire environment. There's only a few bits. You got these like embossments on the wall here, like that head just above my head, right there. You got a few bits of that, and obviously you got these stained glass windows and the doors with the rocks and stuff. that breaks up the monotony. But generally, this room is a great example of how basic these kind of things are. Now again, I can't do a photo mode in this game, but I can try and get as close as I can. And okay, so what we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So from you can actually see how the textures don't quite line up there. So just at the bottom of the plinth on the left hand side and on the right. Yep. Kind of on the right. So they've gone to grab a flat texture of concrete by the looks of things. But then on the left hand side where my halo is, you can see there's quite an obvious continuation of this texture here. It's like a little this little stripe texture there. But then on the right hand side it's kind of a little bit there, but not as much. So some really misaligned textures there. Not the greatest of jobs, and that's only from one edge to another, 7 edges going around. So we can obviously make a lot better work these days. So this will probably be the exact same thing. Okay, so what's probably happening here is the base is one thing. This base is one shape, and then whatever goes on top of it is another shape. Because I'm looking here, we've got the same shape, and I'm reckoning this part of the mesh is bashed in, or at least lined up. And then you've got another shape on top. So this is that kind of wall section, which again the UVs are not doing that any favors. Looking at that kind of the way the UVs bend and warp there. Oof. So one last place I'm going to show you. Where should I show you? Actually, yes. Let's go to. Is it Hook Coast? Let's go to Hook Coast. So this game has a lot of the same aesthetics going through. It's kind of semi-medieval, semi-Victorian. In some places, a little bit of that Scandinavian vibe, like the Knothole Glade where we first went to. A little bit of that Scandinavian vibe, to me anyway. I might be wrong. But here, Knothole Glade, it's. Oh, actually, no, that's not what I'm on about. No, I'm on about somewhere else. It's not Knothole Glade. Oh, it's not Hook Coast. It's Snowspire. There you go. So Snowspire is part of a DLC. It's not a groundbreaking change in the aesthetics. It's just a little bit different. There's just a bit of a different shift. That's all. Now we've got here is some. Now I do think this was produced when we started to understand a bit more about making stuff look better, because this environment does look a little bit better than the rest of them, but we're still suffering from the same limitations. Like this rock wall, for instance. You've got a few things that you could be a bit tricky with, because I'm looking at this and I'm seeing like each one of these little lumps of the rocks. Like every so often it'll change to what might be a completely different bit of geometry. But again, I wish I could draw on this screen, but I can't because it's in a game and I can't do epic pen in the game. But again, maybe we might look at this in class and break it down. Oh, but if you just look right below me there, if you follow down the wall, you can see quite a nasty texture seam. It appears to be a texture seam anyway. Oh, no, it's just a rock sticking out. Okay, not a texture seam at all. So they might be doing some stuff like what they did in what we looked at in Warlord's Ruin at the end of Destiny then, where you've got a rock wall with a flat texture, but then you might have a bit of geometry which you just UV and place over the top of like a big rock or something, and then you place that in the same position but on a model, so it looks like a rock comes out. But a lot of this is just kind of like wonky geometry to make it look like uneven rocks. Pardon me, uneven rocks. Oh, look at it, crates. Our best friends, the crates. There he goes, right in front of me. So stuff like this, you got a brick wall that is just being applied around a square pillar with some of those little rocks sticking out. So yeah, that's a great example of exactly what I was just saying. So you can see there, you got a couple of bricks sticking out. They're not part of that mesh. They're literally just cubes on their own, and you can even see that they're just a cube that's been beveled once, and they've been UV'd, and then they placed a UV over that section of UV. Oh, that section of mesh, of that section of texture. There you go. Sorry, these people on left of me are cheering me, and it's kind of distracting. And then they move that geometry over a piece on the mesh, which looks like it lines up, so it gives you the impression of a brick kind of sticking out. Now I don't know how they did it back in the day, but what they've got here is a bit of blending. So you've got quite a nasty normal map for the floor in there, so it makes it look like there is cobblestone or something underneath. But then you've got these mounds of snow, but they're actually blended in really well. So I'm not quite sure how they would have done that specifically. Oh, basic text. Oh, so foliage in this game is wild because it's super basic. Although we're in a place which is not really going to have much text foliage. But yeah, this game is such a good example of how basic modular modelling can be. Now I want us to aim, obviously, for a better quality than this, but this is a place where we can start off. You know, if you can make this kind of geometry look good and people not care, I mean, look at that horrible texture seam on top of that pillar. If you can make this kind of environment and this kind of texturing work, you can make it even better, much easier. This is like the basic kind of stuff. But even back then, 20 years ago, we were thinking about modular modeling, we were thinking about optimization because we had to. You know, we were using the same texture and over and over and over and over again. And I am starting to think that maybe this normal map stuff came in the anniversary edition, because I can't imagine they're having normal maps in the first game 20 years ago. I don't know. Well, yeah, this. We had to really think about optimization back then. So a lot of repeating textures, and these textures would have been made by hand, no crazy softwares, Photoshop really, and then they would have been obviously made to be tiled, and then they would have been used to their absolute most. You know, they would have been used everywhere that they could do. And then if you repeat your same texture over loads of different surfaces, you got to break up that monotony. So you got to break up the surface to stop it looking very boring and blank. So that's where you would make very simple bits of geometry, stick them in, breaks up that monotonous, like just a wall of wood. And in fact, I've just noticed how up here, what's going on there. So you can see that the wood texture is massive on this side, and then we've just got a random bit of the roofing there. Old games like this are fraught with issues like that because sometimes you just don't notice that you've done something. So yeah, that same texture, that wooden texture, is used all over the shop. Same for this, you know, this cobblestone texture here would have been used everywhere, including, so it would have been used on the actual wall itself, it would have been used on the top section, and it would have been used on the column. Hey, another crate, look at that. But just like Destiny, just like Scorn, just like Control, stairs, you can break the stairs up into two chunks. And in fact, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, from that handrail to that kind of mid handrail split there, that could be one section, and then you basically do it again. Because I look at it and think, okay, these four stairs basically line up to the end of that section, and then these four stairs line up to the end of that section. So modular. Now on this game though, there's more bashing things together than there is about making stuff look absolutely perfectly lined up. It's not a sci-fi game, it's obviously a fantasy game, which means you can be a bit more wobbly about stuff. But like with the walls here, they just literally smash into the column there. Shut up. Like this bends around there. They don't link up particularly neat with this. It just smashes in. You know, you could hide the fact that two walls don't quite meet or line up by putting some kind of like pillar or column in that section to hide it. If you're doing things which are more stylized, there's less chance of things actually meeting up. The more realistic you do stuff, the more chance you have stuff of meeting up. So these are just 4 examples, and again, this is a long video. I'm going to put a timestamp on these bits. Long video, really 4 really good examples. I really kind of want you to look at your own games that you're playing and try and find repeating patterns. You might even be able to find them in like 2D games or even like top-down sides. Like look at League of Legends. If you play League of Legends, like, can you find any modular elements in League of Legends? Are there any modular elements in League of Legends? There's bound to be in the one map that they play. You know, if you're playing games like Apex, if you're playing games like Helldivers. I've not played it myself, but maybe there's some really cool examples of modular modeling in Helldivers. And then what we're going to do in another video is look at stuff called trim sheets, and that's one that I'm going to jump in between games and then Maya and games and Maya to show you how these things are made and where they're being made and how they're being created and stuff. Because we've talked a lot about tiling textures, which is our omnidirectional tiling texture. But then you've got unidirectional tiling textures. Some of those are going to be big single textures, but a good lot of them are going to be what we call trim sheets. And you have many unidirectional tiling textures on one sheet. It's like a bit of a pick and mix. So as you're building an environment and you're texturing stuff, you could say, oh, you know what, on that bit there, I want to have this strip of rock kind of masonry. Oh, across that strip there, I want to have this strip of whatever. You know, it all fits on this tiling texture, this trim sheet. And when you start seeing these things, you'll start seeing trim sheets everywhere, and you start seeing tiling sheets everywhere. And in fact, there's a great example right in front of me right here of how you can even use a big tiling texture on small elements. So you've got this wooden tiling texture there at the top, just above my head. Oh, will you go away? In fact, I'm going to turn down my headphones a second so I don't hear him. This guy behind me is clapping. Okay, this wood texture above my head is a fairly generic long wood texture. It's not the one that's below me there, which is a bit more stylistic. It's just a long bit of wood. But the areas around it are also pretty much long bits of wood. So where you've got this big long tiling texture of wooden planks, you could then unwrap a very simple four-sided like wooden column. It's very loud outside. You unwrap this like wooden column, this four-sided wooden column, and then just laid over one of these sections of plank, and then what you've got there is a big long piece of wood. You don't need another texture for that. You can use another texture for that. Yeah, there's loads of fun stuff we can do. A lot of like really cheeky things we can do to utilize the same texture time and time again. Because again, a game like this back 20 years ago, they had to do that. They had a very limited budget of data and size and things they can process on screen at any one time. So what they had to do is use the same texture over and over again, but be very clever with how they used it. And to stop things looking very boring and bland, they then broke it up with lots of cool props, lots of columns separating them, maybe doing some very basic transitional meshes to kind of break up what you're seeing, that kind of jazz. And this is all the stuff we're going to be doing next. It's really, really fun. So that comes to the end of that. That's a long video, but it's just a lot to look at in these games. And there's lots of the same thing happening time and time again. But really, it does depend on the style of game and its demands that are being placed on it. Is it single player? Is it multiplayer? Is it online? Is it not online? Is it particularly graphically intensive? Is it not particularly graphically intensive? Is it a game where you're loading in 12 people into a small map and you're basically caching all the information there and no one else can interfere with it? Or is it in a game where people can jump in and out of that map and it's quite a large map and a lot of things can happen and, is it a place where 6 people go into but it's just a huge map where, abilities and ults and explosions are happening every 10 seconds, all these things. Is it realistic? Is it stylized? If it's realistic, is it heavily reliant on PBR texturing? If it's stylistic, is it heavily reliant on hand-painted textures? These are all the things we've got to think about for environment modeling and stuff. But at the root of everything, modular modeling is really simple to start off with. And once you've got that basic framework, it's really fun to then twist it and bend it to what you want to produce. Okay, cool.